Which, all right, guys. So just waiting on Jason and Emmanuel. We're going to cover the Sabbath. So just give me 1 second. All right. I got to figure out how to get these boxes set up. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So I was just talking to Jason. We're going to try to get as much of the scriptures as possible set up as far as concerning when the Sabbath starts. Shalom, brother.
Shalom, brother. How are you?
Good, man. How are things going?
Oh, they're going great. Had a nice rest Shabbat. It's ending for us, but yeah, it's pretty good. I
Awesome,
got I
man.
got baptized today.
Yeah, I was just talking to Jason. I was gonna let you share that, but I was just talking to Jason about that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, what a blessing it is.
Is Jason gonna be up on the screen as well? I have to open up
Yeah,
another
he's
box.
coming. Yeah, he's coming. You just need to give him a minute.
No, I know. I'm just trying to figure out how to. I don't know how this works, like the multi-box. Uh,
I
yeah, I'm
also
not.
struggle with this internet stuff.
All right. It's set up for grid. I don't think I have it
Yeah,
right
when he
though. Let me
comes
try.
up, it'll switch. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Actually, if he's going to come up, then I'll go back to this, and then it should be able to pull him up as well. It's a 3-box grid. So, all right, for everyone that's coming in, it's I know it's been a long time coming, but we're going to cover the Sabbath when it starts because there's been a lot of going back and forth. Some people think it starts in the morning, from morning until morning, and then some people believe that it starts evening to evening. And the reason why it was delayed is because there is literally so much scripture and so many different examples in the scripture that it takes such a long time to cover. Jason and I covered this probably about 2 years ago, and I think it was about a 4 or 5 hour teaching. So this will be a good refresher for me and everyone listening as well. If we're going to keep the Sabbath, we have to be keeping it properly, right? And a lot of people have been asking about the feast days and all of that. All of this stuff has to be kept according to the way Yahweh told us to keep it. Otherwise, we're not keeping it properly, which then becomes a problem, right? So hopefully by the time we get through this, if you guys can invite other people that don't know about the Shabbat, please feel free to do that. But this is going to be probably broken up in sections because it's about a 6 or 7 hour teaching, if not longer, depending on how far we go into conversation and all that stuff. So we might have to break it up into maybe 3 or 4 sections. I don't know. We'll just see how far we get. Emmanuel is going to be reading, and then when Jason comes up, we'll be just having a conversation as we go through the scriptures and break everything down. But just wanted to let everybody know we're waiting for Jason to come up, and while he's doing that, how's everything been going in South Africa with you, Emmanuel? You want to share anything with anybody on here? Like, what all have you been doing? I know what you've been doing, but I know a lot of other people are curious.
Yeah, before I do that, I just wanted to say concerning the Shabbat that with people that believe it's morning to morning, just remember that to be very patient and kind to them, and don't like swear them, or as I've been learning, don't beat them with the Bible, because in the future, if they do come to the realization, you're gonna have to apologize for beating them with the Bible. And so yeah, just be patient, because I also used to believe it when I first came into it, and me and Jason went through some scripture together, and it cleared up a lot of things. But other than that, I've just been farming. Just been farming a lot on the farms here, helping Jason with what's it called? Gathering. We're doing lemons. We're almost done lemons, and then it's macadamia nuts now. But I'm also on a different farm doing my own garden, in a sense of like slashing by hand, plowing, making sure, putting in the pipe in, and then planting. So that's what I've been doing, just farming. Obviously enjoying what we have, spending time with brothers, and going hunting and things like that. But the play always comes last. So yeah, it's enjoyable. It's a very peaceful life compared to living in the city and being in a concrete jungle. Definitely gives
Sure.
you a lot of peace. So I would recommend it to anyone.
Yeah. Anytime I've ever traveled, especially in the mountains and stuff of that nature, when you get away from major city areas, your mind is able to relax. You're not on edge 24/7. So it's always a beautiful thing. Um, I'm sure Michael, if anyone hasn't tagged Michael, I invited him. I know he wanted to be part of it. I know he wanted to hear some of the scriptures and stuff of that nature. If he's available, somebody could send him an invite, Crossifix. That would be great. Oh, am I muted? No, I'm not muted.
Now I
Okay.
also sent a message. No.
You sent messages out, you said, Emmanuel?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You keep pausing for some reason. I see the signal on
Fuck, I guess it
your
froze, huh?
yeah, it's showing a signal like your signal bar on my screen.
No.
It shows how much strength your signal has, and it's like low, but I can hear
Your
you.
what? Oh.
Okay, I see. All right. I think I have this figured out. Only thing I don't know how to do is I don't think I can turn my camera off if I have to get up and take a break. I guess it doesn't matter really. So, Emmanuel, where did you get
Tell him you
baptized
just
at?
want to see his beautiful. How are you?
um, I sorry. We drove like, I think it was about an hour and 15 into the wilderness, and a waterfall. I got baptized
Oh, wow.
in a waterfall.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Especially being there.
Yeah.
That's even cooler. What an experience, man.
It was. It was very beautiful. I'm a virgin now, guys.
Yeah, new man, new creation.
A new man.
Now you'll be building up your treasures.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
There he is. Okay, let's see if he pulls
It's
up
definitely
now.
an interesting experience. Yeah.
Loading. There he is. All right, now let's see if it's going to echo or not.
How's it, guys?
Shalom, brother. Can't hear you very good.
Let me just see. Yeah, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. You're probably still setting up.
Yeah, I'm busy setting up. I actually, my computer decided to update, so I'm just waiting for it to finish.
Mine just did
Nearly
as well.
done. Yeah, so we're sitting with an undefiled virgin in the house today.
That's great. That's good though. I'm blessed to hear that it was done there. What a great place to go, man, especially at a waterfall. I can't imagine.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Yah's creation, it's a beautiful moment.
For the person that just commented, it's the same as his name. So just look at the bottom of the box, same as his name. Yeah, no, a lot of people have been waiting on this.
I just want to clear something
So
up.
just give me a second, because I'm actually gonna move into my room, because I'm having
Okay.
some trouble with.
No problem. Go ahead, Jason.
I actually finished this teaching a while ago, Adrian, consoling all the scriptures and stuff like that. But I didn't want to do the teaching at the time where everyone's tempers were so flared and high. We've got brothers like Cody and that are truly brothers, but they keep the Sabbath from. I didn't want them to think that when I do this, it's attacking them. So I just wanted the dust to settle, and when all the tempers are back to normal and people don't feel attacked anymore, so that we do the teaching then, because it's to edify and not to attack anyone.
Yeah, I agree. The only issue I've had is when people don't want to hear out a matter and they just go into defense mode immediately. I get why tensions flare. I get why people get upset because they are convicted about what they believe, and it's difficult for people to change that stance. But at the same time, I totally agree with what you're saying. Doing it right at that time when everybody was talking about it, it wouldn't have worked out, and people's ears would have been closed to hearing it anyway. So to me, it's all about getting to the truth and making sure that even with me, if I say something wrong, I've always had people that are more knowledgeable like yourself that have put me in my place and corrected me, and then I make sure that if I say something incorrect, that I just say, hey, didn't know any better, this is what the scripture says, we'll go through it. And everybody's still learning, and I think we forget that, especially the people that have more knowledge. They get to a place where they stop wanting to hear. They think that they have it all down. And again, for everybody that's listened to Jason's been doing this longer than I have. He's still learning. We're all still learning. We're all in this sanctification process until the Messiah returns. So I didn't want this to be about going back and forth and
What
arguing.
happened with the manual today? You know what happened with Emmanuel today? He got baptized, so now the Spirit can lead him all truth, right? It leads you to all truth. So you get people that come to the knowledge of truth, but they are still being sanctified. It doesn't mean that when you walk in the Torah, you keep the Torah perfectly. Sometimes you stumble at one thing in the Torah, but you are better at other things. And in sanctification, it's a marathon. Your light shines brighter and brighter onto the perfect day or the perfect man. That is what we are striving to do. If the Messiah is our shepherd, we follow him wherever he goes. So you get those who are prideful and say, well, the Sabbath starts in the morning, and they argue about it. But you also get brothers that say the Sabbath starts in the morning, and they don't argue. They just want to know better. They want to have a discussion about this, right? So there's a division. So if you go into this environment, this hostility and anger towards each other, and I know more than you, and my balls are longer than your balls, whatever the case may be, what happens is it divides the body. There's no union in the body. There's not oneness in God, you know. So we must be careful when we speak to someone and how we speak to someone as to not divide that body, because that body is crucial. Where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there I'll be in their midst. Not where one gathers in my name. There's no use. Everyone just goes off on their own tangent and everyone does his own thing. Yahweh has called us to be one body. So people like Cody and them, they are willing to sit and listen. Their understanding is that the Sabbath starts in the morning, and we have to ask certain crucial questions about this. I myself also once believed that. Emmanuel once believed that, you know. So it's studying the truth so that we can get to the full understanding of what a Sabbath is and what it entails. And the Sabbath is partaken in many things. You get crucifixion laws, you get unclean laws. All of those things pertain to the Sabbath. There's riddles of Samson in the Sabbath. And people miss all these things. So this is not done in the environment when everyone is arguing and this topic has become so flared that if you just mention something out of place or ask a question, your head gets bite off. This is not the intent of this study. This study is to edify. You can take it and go research it out for yourself, but it's not to argue about at all.
I agree. 100%. I agree. And again, that's why I personally have went back to just teaching the basics. The only time I ever really talk about the meat of Scripture is with brothers or sisters that already know the meat of Scripture. I try not to get into all of that anymore because there's so many new people coming in that are truly seeking what you just said. So with that, that's a good place to start from. That way, the people that are invited, the people that are listening, just know this is not an attack. We're trying to share truth. You may or may not disagree with it. That's totally fine. But again, that doesn't mean that we can't still come together and, have conversations. I have seen a lot of the people that were in disagreement, or not all of them, but a few of them that have been humble about the whole thing. So that I appreciate when someone's in disagreement, but they're not at the place where because they disagree, they cut you off entirely. They just stop talking to you or they block you. That's not necessary at all. So, yeah, I agree. I'm in agreement with you on that one.
Well, by the end of this, I want people to realize one thing. There are people that are running around claiming to be the 144,000. And if you are the 144,000, you are elect, sealed priests of God, keeping the undefiled law of God. And they are saying that the Sabbath starts in the morning. When by this is finished, undeniably, you'll see they are wrong. The question that you need to ask yourself, are they the 144 then? And why are they biting off the heads of brothers and sisters that they are supposed to bring to truth in love and kindness, with respect and decency? Not telling them he's an idiot or he's a fool or you this or you that. Many of us, all of us, let me put it that way, have had wrong doctrine at a certain time of our life. And every time someone wanted to teach us something when we were prideful, we said, what do you know? You're an idiot. Biting each other's head off. Instead of just saying, hang on, let's hear out a whole matter before we give an answer. And that's what we ought to do, all of us. But if this becomes an argument of you an idiot and you a fool and you this, there's no benefit to a teaching on this at all.
100%. Yeah. And that's one thing also I've noticed, the people that are actually keeping the commandments, regardless of how they keep the Sabbath, the people that are walking in truth and chasing after the commandments and walking like the Messiah walked, I've noticed that they're not acting like the rest of the believers are. Because if you bring these things up to other believers, and I'm not going to call people out, but I'm just going to say in general, those are the people that block you. Those are the people that call you a false teacher and all these other things. Instead of hearing out the entire matter and then studying it out for yourself, these people go on these blocking rampages, and they're blocking themselves from hearing truth. And again, like Jason just said, when I met Jason, this is how I met Jason. Jason and I butted heads over the Trinity because I was so indoctrinated still that I believed in a Trinity. And that was years ago now, but still, I had to humble myself. I made it a point that I was going to go prove him wrong. And I went and studied it out. And after studying it out, I had to humble myself and apologize. So, but we became brothers through this, close brothers throughout all of this. And slowly, we've had a family that's been built in the midst of that, of people that have been coming in and they're here on a regular basis studying with us. So that's how you learn. If you allow your pride to stand in the way in any situation, it's going to hinder you. And with that, also, the very first thing that I ask someone if they're trying to teach me something is, do you keep the commandments and do you keep the Sabbath day? If they tell me no about something that I'm teaching and they're telling me that I'm wrong, I'll hear them out, but I'm not going to go into a deep, long conversation with them because they're not even doing the basics, right? The Messiah said, those that relax one of the least of these commandments and teach men so shall be called least, and those that keep the commandments and teach men so shall be called greatest in the kingdom. So the people that aren't mentioned there are the people that are not keeping any of the commandments at all. So there's a difference between brothers that are in truth, that are iron sharpening iron, and like Jason always says, sparks will fly. If you have two people that are in truth and one person believes a little bit differently, the only way to resolve that difference is with scripture, not with opinions. You have to go into the scripture to prove any point, line by line, precept upon precept.
You know, Adrian, just before we jump in, you know, we are all called to test everything, just like the noble Bereans. We have to go and test what the scriptures say. We can't just blindly say this means this. You have to have biblical definitions for scripture. Scripture has to define scripture. That's the divine word of God. So what happens is we get brothers and sisters, and some are in different stages of knowledge, right? Some trees are tall, some trees are not that tall, some people are grass and some are still flowers. They still need to grow into a tree. It's like a sheep becoming a bull, right? Some people are still sheep and some people have already become bulls. We must be very, very careful, and I see this quite often, even with my own brothers, is we are quickly to point a finger at someone or something and say, this people have got stupid doctrine and they don't know what they're talking about. But they are going through a doctrine and testing everything. I think Emmanuel here can also testify to it. He had to go through a lot of doctrines, stupid doctrines now, because he's testing everything and seeing if it's watertight, you know, is that barrel leaking or not, you know, and if it's watertight, be sound. On Judgment Day, when you are asked, why did you believe this? He says, your word says, and it's waterproof. I believe it. It doesn't say, why did you believe this? And you say, because of this, and different scripture is now given to contradict you. We have to get our doctrine watertight. The Spirit will lead us in all truth. And that is how you get people that, for example, they come to truth and they believe in that the law is still applicable and they start keeping God's law, but they still believe in the Trinity. They must still apply that law to understand that it can't be a Trinity. So they're still coming to that understanding, and we must edify them. And many times when I go onto the people's pages and I see, and it's always an ugly argument, you know, and people calling each other names, not realizing it's your brother. And this is one of the biggest mysteries in Scripture that people, if you remember the teaching I did about the oil going over Aaron's beard, the key there to prophesy, do wonder, signs and miracle is the key that most of us miss. It's loving your brother and carrying him on your shoulder, not being prideful, for the axe is already against the tree. So we must carry our brothers in their knowledge they have and edify them, and it mustn't cause division.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I'm guilty of that myself. Not necessarily calling people stupid, but if I see false doctrine, I call it out, and then I try to get people to join me live and have a conversation. But for the most part, people don't want to have conversations. They don't want to sharpen iron, if you will. They don't want to know the truth. Some people are just stuck in knowing that they're wrong, and then they continue on teaching that. And that is where I have my biggest issue, is when I see somebody purposefully leading people astray. And I've just gotten to the point now to where I'll try for a month or 2 months, longer than I probably should. And then I get to a point where I have to just cut off ties with that person, because I can't watch other people being led astray. That bothers me. And we are to rebuke those type of people sharply, but at the same time, like you said, if somebody does come to the truth, then you're stuck with, having to apologize for the way you treated them. So I try my best not to use name calling and all that stuff, but I do get hung up in the comments a lot in a lot of people's videos because it's
You know
leading
what
people
wisdom
astray.
is, Adrian?
Say again? I
Wisdom.
didn't hear.
Wisdom. Wisdom is understanding your own emotion and controlling it in that way. Meaning that if you know that if you're going to engage in this conversation that's coming up now and your temper is going to flare, rather not engage.
Mm-hmm.
When the whole conversation is finished, at the end, give your 2 cents. That's how you control your temper. Because everyone has a temper. It's just controlling it and learning patience. So that is what wisdom is, understanding who you are and how God created you. Some have more bigger temper than others. If you have a big temper, or anyone for regarding this fact, what we do is, I know for myself, if I engage in this, I'm not going to be myself. Let me rather not engage. And that is understanding. You know what I'm saying? And people must learn self-control. That is what the scripture tells us. Self-control. You cannot control yourself if you do not know yourself. You have to know where your weak points are and you work hard on those things. And this is how we edify the body. This is why you'll see I've not been on lives much lately with all the stupid doctrine going around. I have to exercise self-control and patience in these matters. I can't go on there, and I know if I go on there, sometimes it's so easy, I go on there and I'll make him look like a total fool, which is not my intention. But the audience pushes that narrative of you look like a fool now. And then the guy I'm speaking to thinks I am attacking him, when I'm actually just trying to edify him. So wisdom and understanding is understanding oneself and where your limits are. And as soon as you see you're going to push those boundaries of that limit in wisdom, you will know, rather let me keep quiet and not say anything that does not need to be said, Yeah. And that's what we must exercise, is our patience and wisdom, understanding, all of those things. We must exercise ourselves onto godliness.
I agree 100%. Just for the people that are sending in friend requests or guest requests, we're not going to take any requests because we're getting ready to do a teaching on the Shabbat. And it's going to be a long teaching to begin with. So maybe at the end, because this will be in parts, if people have questions, they can come up afterwards. We just have to see how long this is going to go, because it's a minimum 7 hours. And I have time, but Jason and Emmanuel are 6 hours ahead of my time, which is 12:31. So everybody's on a different time zone. People that are on the East Coast or the West Coast, everybody's on a different time zone. So we're trying to make this work for everyone.
Okay.
So with that being
So
said,
the reading of Matthew, when does it start? Does it start in the evening, or does it start in the morning? How long is a day? We must get to understand these things, because we see some people say a Sabbath starts in the morning and it ends at the next morning, or in the morning and it ends at the evening, regardless of what that is. We want to understand and know by using scripture and our common sense logic when a Sabbath starts, right? That's the whole argument people are having.
yeah, 100%.
Okay, so
also, for the people that are asking, yes, this will be posted on YouTube. I see a lot of people asking that. Sorry, Jason, go ahead.
No problem. The reason we are doing it on Adrian's page is I'm having trouble downloading lives on my page. And then people ask me for weeks, when are you posting? When are you posting? And I can't get to post it. And I tell them, listen, I will post this, but it's out of my control. I can't download it, so I can't post it. So my yes can't be my yes and my no can't be my no, because I tell them I'll download it, but then I don't. So it's yeah, so that Adrian's yes can be his yes and his no can be his no. So you guys don't bother me.
TikTok's been doing that with all of my videos. You just have to keep hitting retry over and over again, and eventually it'll download. But they're doing that with a lot of people's videos. But we'll get it up there on YouTube. This is an important one, so we'll make sure we get it up there.
So Emmanuel, start in Leviticus 15. We're going to start by being unclean for a day. You'll see I'm starting in the middle, then I'm going to the end, and then I'm coming back to the beginning again. There's a reason why. We'll see it all tied together once all the parts are done. So we're going to start reading in Leviticus 15, verse 1 through 33. If you can quickly give that a read.
Okay. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When any man has a discharge from his flesh, his discharge is unclean. And this is his uncleanness, is regard to his discharge, whether his flesh runs with his discharge, or the flesh is stopped up by his discharge. It is in his uncleanness. Any bed becomes unclean on which who has the discharge lies, and any object on which it sits becomes unclean. And anyone who touches his bed has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And he who sits on an object on which he who has the discharge sat has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And he who touches the flesh of him who has the discharge has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and shall be unclean until evening. And when he who has the discharge spits on him who is clean, then he shall wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Any saddle on which he who has the discharge rides become unclean, and whoever touches any of that which was under him is unclean until evening. And he who is carrying them has to wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And anyone who he who has the discharge touches without rinsing his hands in water shall wash his garments, and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And the earthen vessel which he who has the discharge touches has to be broken, and every wooden vessel has to be rinsed in water. And when he who has the discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, and shall wash his garments, and shall bathe his flesh in running water, and be clean. And on the 8th day he takes for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and shall come before Yah to the door of the tent of appointment, and shall give them to the priest. And the priest shall prepare them, the one as a sin offering, and the other as an ascending offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him before Yah because of his discharge. And when a man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all his flesh in water, and be unclean until evening. And any garment, any leather on which there is semen, shall also be washed with water, and be unclean until evening. And when a woman lies with a man, and there is an emission of semen, they both shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And when a as a discharge of the discharge from her flesh is blood, she has to be in her separation for 7 days, and whoever touches her is unclean until evening. And whatever she lies on during her separation is unclean, and whatever she sits on is unclean. And anyone who touches her bed has to wash his garment, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever touches any object that she sat on has to wash his garment, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And if it is on a bed or on an object on which she sits on, when he touches it, he is unclean until evening. And if a man lies with her at all, and her monthly flow is on him, he shall be unclean 7 days. And any bed he lies on is unclean. And when a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, other than the time of her monthly separation, or when she discharges beyond her usual time of monthly separation, all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the day of her monthly separation. She is unclean. Any bed on which she lies on the days of her discharge is to her as the bed of her monthly separation, and whatever she sits on is unclean, as the uncleanness of her monthly separation. And anyone who touches them is unclean, and shall wash his garments, and shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she is clean. And on the 8th day she takes for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and shall bring them to the priest of the door of the tent of appointment. And the priest shall prepare one as a sin offering, and the other as an ascending offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for her before Yahweh for the discharge of her uncleanness. Thus she shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness, when they have defiled my dwelling place, which is in their midst. This is the Torah for one who has a discharge, and for him who emits semen is unclean thereby, and for her who is sick in her monthly separation, and for one who has a discharge, either man or woman, and for him who lies with an unclean woman.
Okay, so just for the audience sake, this is not about, we're not going to have topics about having sex and a woman being on her time. This, all we want to establish in this teaching for now is, when does a Sabbath day start? So we read Leviticus chapter 15, verse 1 through 33. And we see there, you are unclean. In Leviticus 15, verse 2, if you touch something unclean, or something unclean defiles you, right? And then in Leviticus 15, verse 5, it says there, and whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and he will be unclean until when?
Evening.
Evening, right? There's a reason it says evening. So if we scroll down, all of that, Leviticus 15, verse 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all of it is you're unclean until evening. You will be unclean for a day, right? Now, Leviticus 15, verse 13. This is what I need to ask, and this is where we have to apply logic now, right? Leviticus 15, verse 13. And when he that has an issue is cleansed of his issue, then he shall number himself 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes, and bathe his flesh in running water, and shall be clean. If you are unclean for 7 days, question, if you as a person are unclean for 7 days, when, according to this, are you clean again?
On the 8th day.
Yeah, on the 8th day at the evening.
At the evening. So you're going to count 7 days, every evening to evening, evening to evening. And by the 7th day, that evening, the 8th day, which starts at night, you will be clean. But you'll only go when the Levites are awake to bring your offering. They don't have spotlights and slaughterhouses where they can light and just bring an offering at any time. When it's daytime and the sun is shining and you wake up, you are clean. You can now bring your offering. Right?
Excellent
So
point.
if it tells you that you are unclean for 7 days, when in those 7 days does your uncleanness go away? In the morning or in the evening?
Evening.
Evening.
Evening. Okay, so let's scroll back down. Let's go to Leviticus 15, verse 24. And if any man lie with her at all, and her flows be upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and all the bed wherein he lies shall be unclean. Being unclean for 7 days, when does the uncleanness stop?
Evening.
At evening, as the whole context of this chapter told us, you will only be unclean until the evening. Why until the evening?
Because that's when the new day begins.
That's the end of the 7th day.
Mm-hmm.
The evening. It's not now at night or at morning. No. You are unclean for 7 days. So for 7 days you have to be unclean. That means from evening till evening. Evening till evening, 7 times. But on the 7th day, that evening, when it's the 8th day, that evening, you are now clean. Okay? So let's say the argument is, for example, no, Sabbath starts in the morning, right? So what happens if I slept with my wife the previous night at, let's say, 12 o'clock at midnight, and I am unclean? Am I unclean only until the morning? Because the day starts in the morning is the argument?
No, that would be backwards.
No, I'll be unclean until the next evening.
Mm-hmm.
I will go through that whole night being unclean, the whole day being unclean until the evening, and then I'm clean again.
Right.
If the Sabbath starts in the morning like they are claiming, what happens to the person that is unclean at nighttime? What happens if I wake up at nighttime and I find my grandmom has died in her bed and I have to touch her and be unclean? Am I not only unclean for the night because the next morning, according to the argument, is the next day?
Mm-mm.
No, it
It's not a
says
full
until the
day.
evening, not the morning. Yes.
Right.
So is there now immunity for the time at night when you are unclean? Because that
No.
doesn't make logical sense anymore. Because the night is part of the day, the sun to rule over the night and the moon to rule over the night and the sun to rule over a day. Both those parts make a 24-hour period. It's a one-day, evening until evening. So if I go, I'm trying to explain this in my tongue, maybe Emmanuel can help me a bit. So if I go and let's say I go shooting pigs in my orchard at night, which is an unclean thing. And it's, let's say, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I shoot this pig and I grab this pig and I drag it out of the orchard. Am I now only unclean from 1 until 6 in the morning, because the next day, according to those who believe the Sabbath begins in the morning, is a new day? Am I only unclean for those 3 hours, or am I unclean that whole day throughout until the next evening?
Until the next evening.
Until the next evening. That debunks it alone, but this is just the beginning, right? That debunks it totally. That the Sabbath is from evening until evening, because your uncleanliness will be for a whole day. And if you count your uncleanliness for 7 days, how do you count it? From evening until evening, because after 7 days in the evening, you will be clean.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, let's carry on. Let's go to Numbers 19, 7.
Okay. Numbers 19, verse 7. The priest shall then wash his garments, and shall bathe in his body in water, and afterward come into the camp, but the priest is unclean until evening.
Sorry, ma'am, up to 22.
Okay, 7 to 22. And he who is burning it washes his garment in water, and shall bathe in his body in water, and is unclean until evening. And a clean man shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and shall place them outside of the camp in a clean place, and they shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel, for the water for uncleanness. It is for the cleansing from sin. And he who gathers the ashes from the heifer shall wash his garment, and is unclean until evening. And it shall be a law forever to the children of Israel, and to the sojourner who sojourns in their midst, and he who touches the dead of any human being is unclean for 7 days. He is to cleanse himself with water on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he is clean. But if he does not cleanse himself on the 3rd day, then on the 7th day he is not clean. Anyone who touches the dead of the unalive of a human being, and does not cleanse himself, defiles the dwelling place of Yahweh, and that being shall be cut off from Israel. He is unclean. For the water for uncleanness was not sprinkled on him. His uncleanness is still upon him. This is the law when a man dies in a tent. All who come into the tent and all who are in the tent are unclean for 7 days. And every open vessel which has no cover fastened on it is unclean. Anyone in the open field who touches someone slain by a sword, who has died, or a bone of a man, or a burial site, it is unclean for 7 days. And for the unclean being they shall take some of the ashes of the heifer burnt for cleansing from sin, and running water shall be put on them in a vessel. And a clean man shall take a hyssop and a dip in the water, and shall sprinkle it on the tent and all the vessels, and on all the being who were there, or on the one who touched a bone, or the slain, or the dead, or the burial site. And the clean one shall sprinkle the unclean on the 3rd day, and on the 7th, and on the 7th day he shall be cleansed himself, and he shall wash his garment and bathe in water, and shall be clean in the evening. But the man who is unclean and does not cleanse himself, that being shall be cut off from among the assembly, because he has defiled the set-apart place of Yahweh. Water for uncleanness has not been sprinkled on him. He is unclean, and it shall be a law for them forever. And the one who sprinkles the water for uncleanness washes his garment, and the one who touches the water for uncleanness is unclean until evening. And whatever the unclean being touches is unclean, and the being who touches it is unclean until evening.
Okay, so again, remember, we are just trying to establish when a day starts. So there's a lot said in here, and you have to keep in mind, don't be afraid when you hear all these things and think, shit, I'm not doing this, what do I need to do? This was when the tabernacle was with us. There was about a 15-kilometer radius where the whole area had to be cleansed and cleaned. That's where there was always smoke in the sky because they burnt incense. Regardless of that, this is about when a day starts. So if you touch, according to Numbers, an unclean person, you're unclean until the evening, correct? That's what we just read in Numbers 19 verse 7, correct? You'll be unclean until the evening, and Numbers 19 verse 8, unclean until the evening. Numbers 19 verse 10, you are unclean until the evening. Here comes it again.
Right.
Same question I'm asking again. Make it make sense for yourself. Numbers 19 verse 11. He that touches a dead body of any man shall be unclean 7
7 days.
days. So it's giving us a 7-day time period. He shall purify himself with it on the 3rd day. And on the 7th day he shall be clean. But if he purify himself the 3rd day, then the 7th day he shall not be clean. So again, it's giving us a time period, right? So you'll be unclean for 7 days. We want to know, when does the 7th day end then? Numbers 19 verse 14. This is the law, when a man dies in a tent, and all that come onto the tent, and it shall be in the tent, shall be unclean 7 days. Verse 16. And whoever touches one that is slain with the sword in the open field, or a dead body, or bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. Verse 19. And the clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean one 3rd day, and on the 7th day. And in the 7th day, shall he purify himself, and wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and he shall be unclean at evening.
Yes.
So you are unclean for 7 days. How do you calculate your days then? From evening until evening. He won't be clean at morning when the new day starts. He will be clean at evening when the new day starts. That is 7 days. That's a daytime, sunlight daytime, and nighttime from evening until evening. So it starts when the night begins at evening, and it ends when the sun sets at evening, right? That is a day period. If you are unclean for 7 days and your Sabbath starts in the morning, calculate it for me. You can't be unclean for 6.5 days. No. 7 days. Until when? Until the evening. Why? Because that evening of the 7th day is the 8th day. On that day, you are now clean. So you won't go on the 8th day at evening to the priest and say, here's my offer. No. You wait until the morning when there's light, and then you can bring your offering. So according to what you've just read, how long are you unclean for? It's 7 days. When do those 7 days end?
The 8th day, and at the evening of the 7th day, after the 7 days, I should say. Yeah, evening.
At evening. Numbers 19 verse 19 just summed it up for us. If you're unclean in any matter, you will be unclean. The priest will wash you on the 3rd day and the 7th day, and the evening of the 7th day, you are now clean. So if a Sabbath started in the morning, how do you calculate this?
Well, you wouldn't be able to, because otherwise it would say morning. It would say morning everywhere it says evening.
Exactly.
But
it doesn't for a reason.
Right. What you just said, people have to think about the fact that people are asleep at night, like Jason just said, in the temple. During the day is when you would take your sacrifices or whatever it was to the priests. So that alone makes perfect sense.
Yes. And when it says on the 7th day at evening, you will be clean. But the 7th day is a time period between sunset and sunset and sunset. On the 7th day can be a nighttime period. It can be a morning period. Days are calculated in parts. There are 4 parts in a day, or watches, right? Which we'll get into. That's the other part of the teaching. So according to this, you'll be unclean for 7 days. So if I, for example, touch a dead body at nighttime and the day ends starts in the morning, that means I'll only be unclean for 6.5 days. Calculate it. You'll see your mistake. That's a problem. That's a contradiction. You can't do that. Correct? Okay, so now we're going to go to the next one. This is just the topic of being unclean for a day. Right? So just bear with us. So we're going to go into different topics later, the quails and all of those things. But I'm just addressing this first so you can understand how to calculate. Okay, so Leviticus 11 verse 24 to 33.
24 to 33, you said.
Yeah, Leviticus 11, 24 to 33, yes.
Okay. And by these you are made unclean. Anyone touching the carcass of any of them is unclean until evening, and anyone picking up part of the carcass of any of them has to wash his garment and shall be unclean. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And anyone picking up the part of the carcass of any of them has to wash his garments and shall be unclean until evening. Every beast that has a split hoof, not completely divided, or does not chew the cud is unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcass is unclean. And whatever goes on its paws among all the creatures that go on all fours, those are unclean to you. Anyone who touches their carcass is unclean until evening. And he who picks up their carcass has to wash his garments, and they shall be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. And these are unclean to you among the creeping creatures that creep on all the earth: the mole, the mouse, the tortoise after its kind, the gecko, and the land crocodile, and the sand reptile, and the sand lizard, and the chameleon. These are unclean to you among all that creep. Anyone who touches them when they are dead becomes unclean until evening. And whatever any of them in its dead state falls upon becomes unclean, whether it is any wooden object, or garment, or skin, or sack, any object in which work is done, it is put in water, and it shall be unclean until evening. Then it shall be clean. Any earthen vessel into which of any of them falls, whether it becomes unclean, and you break it.
Okay. So, in verse 30, it says there's any animal, creeping, whatever touches you are unclean. So what happens to me if I'm sitting in my house and the gecko falls on me? In Africa, there's a lot of geckos. A gecko falls on me at night time. Am I only unclean until the morning? Because according to the argument, the day starts in the morning. No. I'm unclean until the evening because the day starts at evening. I can't be unclean just for the nighttime period because tomorrow morning is the next day. No, it doesn't work like that. You're contradicting scripture. I will be unclean that night, the whole following day until the evening. That's when I'll be unclean. Like you calculate 7 days. In the evening of the 7th day, you will be clean. When the 8th day starts. But you'll only in the 8th day bring your offering when you are clean. Not at night, in the morning to the priests when they are taking offerings. Make sense?
Perfectly.
Okay. Quickly jump to Deuteronomy 23, verse 9 through 11.
Okay. Deuteronomy 23, 9 to 11. 23 to 11 says, when the camp goes out against your enemy, then you shall guard yourself from every evil matter. When there is any man among you who is not clean because of an emission in the night, then he shall go outside the camp. Let him not come into the midst of the camp, and it shall be at the approach of the evening that he bathes in water, and when the sun sets, let him come into the midst of the camp.
So here's our answer. That's why I asked the question. If
Now
you
clean.
are unclean at night, and the Sabbath, according to you, starts in the morning, according to scripture, you should be clean in the morning, but yeah, it gives you the clear answer. Just gave us the answer, people. How simple is scripture? Let's read it again. When the host goes forth against thy enemies, then keep thee from every wicked thing. If there be among you any man that is not clean by reason of his uncleanness, that continues him but uncleans him by night, then shall he go abroad out of the camp. He shall not come within the camp at night time, right? But it shall be when evening comes, and he shall wash himself with water. And when the sun is at dawn, he shall come into the camp again.
It is. Simple.
So, question. If your Sabbath starts in the morning until the next morning, or in the morning until the evening, whatever the case may be, if you are that's at nighttime, that means you will only be unclean until the morning, because that's the new day, right? But here it tells you explicitly, when the sun goes down at that evening, you will be clean, because that's the end of the day. That's also how you will calculate if you're unclean for 7 days, when your 7th day ends. It doesn't end in the morning when the day starts, according to the argument. It ends at the evening when the day starts. Correct?
Well, and it clearly states in 11, it says, when the sun is down, he shall come into the camp again, making him clean, making him allowed to enter the camp.
And that's when
Makes
something
perfect
touches you at night time. Because remember, I'm asking these questions out of the perspective of those who believe that a day begins in the morning, right? That means if I tonight, it's nighttime by me now, touch something that is unclean, for example, that means by tomorrow morning I should be clean, because that's a new day. But no, I'm only clean by tomorrow afternoon if the sun sets, because that's a new day. You'll be unclean for a day, or unclean for 7 days. So if you want to calculate if you're unclean for 7 days, you don't calculate until the morning when the day starts, because that's not when the day starts. That's when the sunlight day starts, but your day started prior when the sun set. From sunset to sunset at evening is when a day starts.
Yeah, I think
Correct?
the confusion, I think, is what's coming with people is it's a full day. Sunset to sunset is a full day.
Yes, people think that a day only entails 12 hours.
Right.
But a working day only entails 12 hours. A full day entails 24 hours. That's why you get the priests, which we will cover here, that had to light their candles before the day starts. At evening, they had to fill their lamps. They had to start their fires to burn through the night into the next day, because that night and the next day is one day until the evening. Okay. So, with that being said, let me just scroll up again. Will one of you guys recap this quickly, what we've just done?
Yeah, so
If you can.
we went through the uncleanliness as far as discharges between a man or a woman, and how all of that pertaining to the law, you are biblically clean at evening, depending on whether it's for a day or a 7-day period, right? According to what we read. And then what we covered in Numbers, same thing. It clearly just established the scripture that we just read, established that when the sun goes down, after the man has cleaned himself from being unclean from something unclean touching him, after he washes himself, when the sun is set, he is then allowed to go back into his camp. Because he is unclean, he is outside of the camp. So right now what we're doing is establishing a full biblical day, not according to the way that things are set up currently, the way that people view a day, a 12-hour period. A full day is a 24-hour period of time, not 12 hours. So what we're establishing right now, just for where we're at, is just when does the day, the Sabbath begin, or a day begin, is from evening until evening, not the way that we're used to doing it here in Babylon, morning to morning when we wake up and go to work. That's not what the scripture says.
Okay, and then also remember, I just read a comment, I just want to explain, we'll get to this, parts of a day. Remember, they didn't have a clock or a watch like we have. It's now 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Their days worked in parts. You had from night, your night watch was from 6 to 9, the first part, 9 to 12, the second part, from 12 to 3, the third part, and from 3 to 6, the fourth part. From 6 in the morning to 9, the fifth part. From 9 to 12 in the daytime, the sixth part, and so on and so forth. Their days worked in parts. It's called the watches, right? That is, we'll do that at the end. Regardless of not having time like we have today, from evening until evening is established that you are unclean. So if, for example, your morning Sabbath starts, let's say, at sunrise and not sunset, but Before the sun rose at 3 o'clock in the morning, you touched something unclean, or you had sex with your wife, for example. So you're unclean, right? Does it mean when you wake up 3 hours later, you are now clean, or you'll be unclean until the evening? Because your logic dictates that if the day starts, the Sabbath day starts in the morning, that morning you should be clean. Because you're only clean when a new day starts. You will be unclean for a day.
Yeah. I mean,
Correct?
that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I already know this, but it
So
makes sense to me.
if I say I touch a unclean thing at nighttime, or I have intercourse with my wife, whatever the case may be, can I then at 12 o'clock in the night wake up because I'm unclean and go to the priest and say, listen, yeah, I'm unclean, you must cleanse me? No, they are sleeping. I have to
Right.
wait for the sunrise on that same day to go and tell them this. That's why the people approached Moses and them at sunrise. It's still the same day because they started the prior evening when the sun set. Just when there is sunlight, you can bring your offering, because that's when the priests sacrificed their offerings. Let's quickly go read about it a bit in Exodus. Exodus, let me show you an example. Exodus 18, verse 13 through 14.
Also, I just want to address a comment I just saw. Somebody said, what does it matter? Just so you know, in the law, all of the biblical feast days, including the Sabbath, are given to us by instruction as according to when they start and when they end. So it matters greatly. If you're not keeping them correctly, you're not keeping them. That's why we're covering this.
And people, again, I'm just stating, this is not about being unclean. It's not about sleeping with your wife. We're trying to establish
Okay.
when a day starts. Regardless of everything that we are reading, all we're trying to establish is when does a Sabbath day start? Does it start in the morning? Does it start in the evening? Does it start 12 o'clock at night? That's all this is about. Everything we read in between is irrelevant. We just want to find and establish a day, the start of a day, according to biblical scripture.
Exodus 18:13 to 14. And it came to be on the next day that Moses sat to rightly rule the people. And the people stood before Moses from morning until evening. And when the father-in-law of Moses saw all that he did for the people, he said, what is this that you're doing for the people? Why do you sit by yourself, all the people standing before you from morning until evening?
Okay. So this is where they go. They see the people approached Moses in the morning, because it says there, and it came to pass on the morrow, while he's speaking today, in today's term, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Tomorrow we'll go to Moses, but that tomorrow started that evening when the sun set. They only go to Moses for counsel or for understanding when Moses is sitting on the seat of Moses and judging and ruling. They don't go to Moses at night time. He's also sleeping. He's not a god, he's a man. But here's the difference. When comes change for change of the law, there's necessarily a change of the priesthood. You can now approach the throne anytime, for the Messiah is always present. At night, you can bring your sins at 3 o'clock in the morning, at 12 o'clock at night, in the daytime, whenever. That's the priesthood that changed, but that's a different topic. So we're seeing here, they are arguing, see, this passage states that a day starts in the evening, because it says on the morrow, in the morning, in the evening. Well, in the morning is when your shops open. In the morning is when people trade. This is what it's speaking about. You bring your sacrifice in the daytime when the priests can see. They don't have spotlights and electricity like we have. How do they see your lamb? Has it got spot and blemish at 12 o'clock at night? How would they see that? They wait for daytime to bring the sacrifice, people. This is how logical scripture is. But you have to be illogical to think that if a day starts in the evening that you can bring your sacrifices. The priest had set times for your sacrifices. That's all different teaching. Okay? So the people bring can be unclean. So if you're unclean and for 7 days, that evening you'll be clean again on the 8th day, which is evening when the sun sets. That is the 8th day. Then would you then bring at 7 o'clock, because it's evening, your sacrifice to the priest? No. You will be clean that whole night, wake up the morning and bring your sacrifice to the temple. When it's daytime, when they can do things. Okay, let's go to Exodus 32, verse 5 and 6.
You cut out, what'd you say?
Exodus 32, verse 5 and 6.
32, 5
And I'm
and
just
6.
grabbing something to drink. While you read it, you can probably explain it.
Exodus 32, 5 and 6. And Aaron saw and built a slaughter place before it. And Aaron called out and said, Tomorrow is the festival to Yahweh. And they raised early on the next day and offered an ascending offering and brought peace offering. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. I'm also, Adrian, going to use the bathroom here. So I missed the scripture if you can read it. But hopefully I'll be back in time.
All right, I'm just gonna reread through it again. I'll start in verse 4. It said, And he received them from their hand and fashioned them with a graving tool. And after that he made a molten calf, for context, and said, These be the gods of Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to Yahweh. So the following day, right? Tomorrow. And they rose up early on the morrow, meaning they're awake, they're waking up, and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and to the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play. So again, I think where Jason's going with this is the fact that they're going to sleep, right? They built an altar first, which is what they were trying to worship, and it's in verse 5, it's saying, Tomorrow, Aaron says, is a feast to Yahweh. And then verse 6 says, And they rose up early on the morrow and offered the burnt offerings. So here is a feast, right, to Yahweh. And then verse 6 is showing that they rose up early on that next day, meaning the morning, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play.
Just when I read.
Can you hear me, Adrian?
Yeah, I can hear you. I thought I heard one of you back.
So
I thought
you
I heard
read
somebody
Exodus.
talking.
Sorry, man. I just got something to drink.
Yeah, I just was given some background to it on verse 4 as well, just what they were doing, that they were making this golden calf. And then I explained how Aaron made a proclamation that tomorrow is a feast day to Yahweh, so that would be the following day. And then how they rose up early on the morrow and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And the people sat down to eat and to drink and rose up to play.
Yeah, so it states, and when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it, and Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow as the feast is the feast to Yahweh. And they rose up early on the morrow. Early on the morrow, because why does he state early on the morrow? Because the morrow started at evening. They didn't wake up at evening when they go to bed. Tomorrow started at the evening, they slept, and they woke up early to bring the sacrifice. That's how all sacrifices worked, and all Thanksgiving sacrifices work. You woke up when the sun rose and you brought your sacrifice. You didn't wake up at night and do it. Night is when everyone goes to bed. The same applies today. You don't go to work until 12 o'clock at midnight, or some do. Your day ends at clock off time, at Chila time, right? You're going home at 5 o'clock. Your day ends. And then you're resting, and then it's your next day. Right? So it's from evening until evening. Your sacrifices is always brought in the daytime. Throughout the whole scripture, you'll see this. They never bring a sacrifice at night. They never go knock on the priest's door and say, Hey, Aaron, listen, wake up. It's 10 o'clock at night. I've got sin. You must wake up and give my offering. No. They waited until the sun rose. They cleaned the altars. They lit the lamps and the fires as it should be. And then offerings was taken. And the Levite priest appointed times for offering in that day. Every Levite, if there's a new high priest, he changed the times of offering. He could change the offering. Let's say a sin offering was at 10 until 12 in the morning. the next Levite that's appointed, or when that one dies or passes away, maybe his sin offering is from 2 until 3 in the afternoon. But none of them had appointed time for bringing the offering in when it was nighttime. That's just illogical, and this is the illogical. It just does not make sense when people tell me, well, because of this, that means that the Sabbath starts in the morning. No, it started at evening. You were just sleeping. And if your argument is that the Sabbath starts in the morning, what happens that night, previous night, before the morning comes, at 3 o'clock, I slept with my wife. Am I unclean until the morning? No, I'm unclean until the evening, because that's when the day ends.
Yeah, so just to underline what Jason is saying is, if it's a day, because we were reading the difference between a day, depending on what it is, and then we were reading the difference between 7 days, right? So some was a day and some was 7 days. So we established the 8th day, right, was the day that you would be clean on the evening of the 8th day, and then on the first day. So what Jason's trying to do is just establish a day's period of time. So what Jason is saying is, if you're unclean in the middle of the night, if you're basing your Sabbath on morning to morning, then let's say an hour before the sun rises, you become unclean somehow. And then the sun rises, are you automatically clean as soon as that hour passes? That's not a full day. It's not a full biblical day. That's the point that he's trying to make.
Exactly.
And
yes.
we haven't even gotten into, like he was just talking about, we haven't even gotten into the sacrifices, and when he was just touching on it lightly, but once we get into that, it's going to show you even more in depth. It was the sacrificial part was always done during the day, not in the middle of the night, like he was saying.
All of them are in the day because that's when they have light to see. Remember, they are slaughtering animals. You can't slaughter an animal at nighttime. You can't inspect the animal at nighttime. They didn't have electricity and spotlights like we do. One of my biggest issues when I'm hunting and I'm killing something at night to slaughter it is light. You can't cut the stomach of something and all that crap of the animal goes onto the meat. That makes the meat unclean. They have sunlight to do it. That's why they wait until the sun rises. It doesn't mean when the sun rises it's the beginning of the day because they bring their sacrifices. The day started prior at the evening. They slept, woke up, and then brought their sacrifices to the high priest. Okay? So if you have a bit of sense, you can put 2 and 2 together. Okay, so let's go to Emmanuel's verse. The quails in the wilderness. Exodus. He's going to read Exodus chapter 16, verse 8 to 26, and then we'll break it down.
Okay. Just give us a second. Okay.
You're still echoing.
Yeah. Okay. 8 to 26 says, And Moses said, In that Yahweh gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to sanctification, for Yahweh hears your grumbling which you make against him. And what are we? Your grumbling are not against us, but against Yahweh. And Moshe said to Aaron, Say to all the congregation of the children of Israel, Come near before Yahweh, for he has heard your grumbling. And it came to be that Aaron spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and see, the esteem of Yahweh appeared in a cloud. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the grumblings of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, Between the evenings you are to eat meat, and in the mornings you are to be satisfied with bread. And ye shall know that I am Yahweh your Elohim. And it came to be that the quails came up at evening and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay all round the camp. And the layer of dew went up, and see, on the surface of the wilderness was a small round substance, as fine as frost, on the ground. And the children of Israel saw. They said to each other, What is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moshe said to them, It is the bread which Yahweh has given you to eat. This is the word which Yahweh has commanded. Let every man gather it according to each one need, 1 omer for each being, according to the number of beings. Let every man take for those who are in his tent. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered some more, some less. And they measured by omers. And he who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Each one gathered according to his need. And Moshe said, Let not one leave any of it until morning. They did not listen to Moses. So some of them left part of it until morning, and its bred worms and stank. And Moses was wroth with them, and they gathered it every morning, each one according to his need. And when the sun became hot, it melted. And it came to be on the 6th day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said to them, This is what Yahweh has said. Tomorrow is rest, a Shabbat set apart to Yahweh. That which you bake, bake, and that which you cook, cook. And lay up for yourself all the leftovers to keep it until morning.
Sorry guys, I have to put my volume down and mute when Emmanuel is reading, so there will be a bit of a pause in between reading and speaking. I could not hear if Adrian said he was going somewhere. My phone was on silent. So before we even get there, we'll go back to that, Emmanuel. I forgot something. We have to go to the feast days from evening to evening, and then we'll get to that. So we're going to read again. Sorry, my mistake. So we established that you'll be unclean until the evening, right? So that's established. You won't be unclean until the morning, because that's not when a day starts. A day starts at evening. So we're going to go and establish this with the feasts of Yahweh, his feast days, and how they are appointed. And then we'll go back to the quails and what happened in the wilderness. So the next chapter we're doing. So we did uncleanness for a day, and that you will be unclean until the evening. So now we're going to calculate the feast days and how long they are and how long do they last. Okay. So let's go to Leviticus. We're going to start in Leviticus 23, verse 1 and 2 and 3. So, no, hang on. All the way to, it's the whole chapter, Emmanuel.
Okay, that's fine.
All the way to,
I just need to get something to drink in a bit.
Okay, I'll grab you something now. I'm just trying to see, yeah. So it's all of it.
It's all of it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the whole feast day, yeah.
All the way. So Leviticus 23, verse 1 through 44.
Wow.
We're going to read all of that, and then we're going to go break it down for you. And so we can establish how a day starts there in the feast days. And then I'm going to ask you certain logical questions, and you have to answer it. And then you'll see, you'll answer it for yourself. It's logical.
Leviticus 23, the whole chapter. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, The appointed times of Yahweh, which you are to proclaim as a set-apart gathering, my appointed times are these. 6 days work is done, but on the 7th day is a Shabbat of rest, the set-apart gathering. You do not work, it is a Shabbat to Yahweh, in all your dwellings. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, the set-apart gathering which you are to proclaim in their appointed times. In the first new moon, on the 14th day of the new moon, between the evenings, is the Pesach, or Passover, to Yahweh. And on the 15th day of this new moon is a festival of Amazorut, to Yahweh. 7 days you eat unleavened bread. On the first day you have a set-apart gathering. You do not do no servile work. And you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh for 7 days. On the 7th day is the set-apart gathering. You do no servile work. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, When you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest waves. Thank you. On that day, When you wave the sheaf, you shall prepare a male lamb a year old, a perfect one, as an ascending offering to Yahweh. And it is a grain offering, 2/10 of an elf, of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made by fire to Yahweh, a sweet fragrance, and its drink offering, 1/4 of a hin of wine. And you do not eat bread or roasted grain or fresh grain until the same day that you have brought an offering to Elohim, Allah forever, through your generations in all your dwellings. And from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourself 7 complete Sabbaths. Until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, you count 50 days. Then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yahweh. Bring 4 from your dwelling for a wave offering, 2 loaves of bread, a 2/10 of an elf of fine flour. They are baked with leaven, first fruits to Yahweh. And beside the bread you shall bring 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and 1 young bull and 2 rams. They are an ascending offering to Yahweh, with grain offering and their drink offering, and an offering made by fire for a sweet fragrance to Yahweh. And you shall offer 1 male goat as a sin offering, and 2 male lambs a year old, as a slaughter of peace offering. And the priest shall wave them beside the bread of the fruits as a wave offering before Yahweh, beside the 2 lambs. They are separate, they are set apart to Yahweh for the priest. And on this same day you shall proclaim a set-apart gathering for yourselves. You do no servile work on it, Allah forever in all the dwelling throughout your generation. And when you reap the harvest of your land, you do not reap the corners of your field when you reap, and do not gather any gleaning from your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th new moon, on the 1st day of the new moon, you have a rest of remembrance of Teruah, set apart to gathering. You do no servile work, and you bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, On the 10th day of this 7th new moon in Yom Kippur, it shall be a set-apart gathering for you, and you shall afflict your beings, and shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. You do no you do no work on that same day, for it is Yom Kippur, to make an atonement for you before Yahweh your God. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. And any being who does any work on the same day, that being I shall destroy from the midst of his people. You do not work a law forever throughout your generation in all your dwellings. It is a Shabbat of rest to you. And you shall afflict your beings on the 9th day of the new moon at evening. From evening to evenings you observe your Sabbath. And Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, On the 15th day of the 7th new moon in the festival of Sukkot, for 7 days to Yahweh. On the 1st day is a set-apart gathering, you do no servile work. For 7 days you bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh. On the 8th day there shall be a set-apart gathering for you, and ye shall bring an offering made fire to Yahweh. It is a closing festival, you do no servile work. These are the appointed times of Yahweh which you proclaim as set-apart gathering, to bring an offering made by fire to Yahweh, an ascending offering, a grain offering, a slaughter, drink offering, as commanded for every day. Beside the Sabbath of Yahweh, beside your gifts, and beside all your vows, and beside all your voluntary offerings which you give to Yahweh. On the 15th day of the 7th new moon, when you gather in the fruit of your land, celebrate the festival of Yahweh for 7 days. On the 1st day is a rest, and on the 8th day a rest. And ye shall take for yourself on the 1st day the fruit of the good trees, branches of palm trees, twigs, leafy trees, and willows of the stream, and shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim for 7 days. And you shall celebrate as a festival to Yahweh for 7 days in the year, a law forever in your generation. Celebrate in the 7th new moon. dwell in the booth for 7 days. All who are native born in Israel dwell in booth, so that your generation know that I made the children of Israel dwell in booth when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Thus did Moses speak to the appointed times of Yahweh to the children of Israel.
Okay, so we established how a day works when you are unclean. We are now going to establish how a day works in Yahweh's feasts. So you'll see that people have an argument. They say, well, if it's feast days, it's calculated different, thinking that Yahweh is illogical and Yahweh now changes his days just because it's a feast day. A day is established in the same way that you establish when you are unclean and when that uncleanness ends. For if you keep a feast of Passover and you're unclean until the evening according to the law, remember? So the calculation stays exactly the same. So let's go through this. Okay. There's a whole lot to read. I'm not going to read all of it again. Okay, Leviticus 23 verse 3. 6 days shall you work, shall work be done, but the 7th day is a Sabbath rest, and a holy congregation. You shall do no work therein. It shall be a Sabbath of the Lord your God in all your dwellings. So we established that the 7th day, if you are unclean that evening, remember, you are clean again in the 8th day. Adrian, can you guys still hear me properly?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
So let's go
Can you hear
down to
me?
Leviticus 23:15. Yes, I can hear
Okay.
you perfectly. And you shall count unto yourself from tomorrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. So he's telling you, you must count 7 days after waving the sheaf. How do they count it? From morning until morning?
No, can't be.
No. From evening, he just told us in the evening, right? Verse 16. Even on tomorrow, after the 7th Sabbath, shall you number 50 days, and you shall offer new meat of offspring to Yahweh. How do you number 50 days after that 7th day? From morning until morning, or from evening until evening? Well, obviously, it's going to be from evening until evening. Leviticus 23 verse 18. And you shall offer with the bread 7 lambs without blemish of the first year, and 1 young bullock, and 2 rams. They shall be for a burnt offering unto Yahweh. So, question. You must offer 7 lambs without blemish. Can you offer those lambs at night? Can the priest inspect them to see if they have blemish?
Nope.
No, you'll wait until that day begins at evening, but you'll wait until the morning and you bring your offering, because your offering needs to be inspected. You need daylight to do it. It's
And
still on the 7th day.
it's not just one person's offering either. It's they have to have enough time for everyone to bring their offerings to be inspected. It has to be done through the day.
Yes, not at night. That's why all offerings were in daytime. It doesn't mean the day then starts then. It's the only time you can bring your offering to be inspected. They don't have spotlights, people. Okay, so Leviticus 23 verse 24. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, on the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall you have a Sabbath, a memorial blowing of trumpets, an holy congregation. So it says, speak to the children of Israel on the 7th day on the month. When do they blow that trumpet on the 7th day?
Evening.
On evening, when you see the moon.
I was on mute.
Leviticus 23 verse 27. Also on the 10th day, the 7th month, this shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy congregation unto you. Question. On the 10th day of the 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. When
Not a
does that
night.
start? In the morning or the evening?
It says a day of atonement.
Yes. Leviticus 23:28. And you shall do no work in that same day, For it is a day of atonement, to make atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim. Verse 29. For whoever's soul it be to shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from amongst the people. When do you start afflicting your soul? In the morning or in the evening? When do you move the unleavened out of your house?
Evening.
Before the moon rises that evening, because you're entering a new day. For verse 29, for whatsoever soul it be that shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off from amongst the people. Why does it say in that same day? Because the day starts at evening until throughout the next evening. So in that same day, you will bring your offering. It doesn't tell you what time. They don't bring their offerings at 1 o'clock in the morning when the sun is up and they can inspect the lambs or the sacrifice. Right? Verse 28. And you shall do no work in that same day, for it is a day of atonement, to make atonement for you before Yahweh your Elohim. Verse 29. For whoever soul it be shall not be afflicted in that same day, he shall be cut off amongst his people. Verse 30. And whoever soul it be that does any work in that same day, the same souls will be destroyed from amongst the people. Verse 32. It shall be unto you a Sabbath rest, and you shall afflict your souls. In the 9th day of the month, at evening, from evening unto evening, shall you create your Sabbath. When? From morning until morning. No. Why from evening? You can't make the argument, oh, but it's a feast day, so days are calculated differently. No. With Yahweh, there's no confusion. A day is calculated the same throughout every generation.
It really establishes it because it says at even, so at the evening, from evening until evening. So it's 3 times it's telling you at evening is when it starts, and then it's from that evening until the following evening.
So if you have to blow your trumpet, do you blow it in the morning or do you blow it at evening when the day starts and you see the moon?
When the day starts.
It becomes so logical, it's laughable. Any case, Leviticus 23, verse 34. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be the feast of tabernacles for 7 days unto Yahweh. How did we calculate uncleanliness in 7 days? At evening. It's the same thing, people.
Not to mention the Passover is on the 14th day starting at evening and went into the 15th day. And when they were actually celebrating the Passover, Yahweh instructed them to stay dressed throughout the night because they were going to exit the following morning.
Exactly. Verse 36. 7 days shall you offer offering made by fire unto Yahweh. When will this offering be made? At night or in the day? It will be made in the daytime. It doesn't mean that the day hasn't started yet. It started at the evening. You just can't offer in the evening. On the 18th day shall be a holy congregation unto Yah. You shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh. It is a solemn assembly, and you shall do no service work therein. In that day, whether it's nighttime or daytime in the sunlight, in that day you shall do no work. You shall not gather anything nor do anything. It's a solemn rest. Leviticus 23 verse 39. Also, in the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep a feast unto Yahweh 7 days. On the 1st day shall it be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. When does that 7th and 8th day start?
It has to be evening from evening. Can't be different.
Can't be different, otherwise you're contradicting scripture of being unclean. Remember, you can't keep the feast if you're unclean, and you're only unclean until the evening. Not the morning. Logic, right? 101. So, to conclude, the feast days are from evening until evening. So if I, let's say, wanted to keep the Passover feast, remember there were people that touched other people that were unclean. They wanted to keep the Passover feast, and Moses and them told them, no, count 50 days and then you can keep the feast again. They will be unclean because they missed that time. But if I am unclean, I can't be then say, okay, well, I'm unclean. In the morning is a new day. I want to keep the feast. No, you're unclean until the evening. Just because it's a Sabbath day law, yeah, doesn't mean that the days now change. Because then the days have to change of being unclean as well. You aren't unclean until the morning. You're unclean until the evening. So if I wanted to keep the Sabbath or the Passover and do a Passover lamb in that time with Moses and Aaron, and I got there, I couldn't tell Aaron, listen, Aaron, no, you know what? The day starts tomorrow morning and I touch something unclean now. So when I wake up, I'll be clean. I can keep the feast. They'll laugh at you because the day doesn't start in the morning. It starts in the evening. That's the end of the day, evening to evening. So you'll be unclean regardless if you touch something or not. And you're telling Aaron, I'll be clean in the morning. He will tell you, no, you are unclean until the evening. The next day you can participate. That's why the Passover was moved on by 50 days because they missed it by a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you would also have to have time for preparation in going into the Sabbath, right? So I get where people are getting that. They would say, well, we'd have the whole day. But as you're seeing, as we're going through these scriptures, they're preparing their stuff before the sun goes down. So it's at the end of the day, towards the end of the day, before the sun goes down, like with the man that was unclean, he had to wash himself, and then at sundown, he could enter back into the camp. Same thing with Sabbath day preparation. Before the sun goes down, normally for me, it's midday. I try to get everything done and out of the way so that when the sun sets, I can enter into the Sabbath.
So just for argument's sake, let me play advocate here, right? So if I believe that a day starts in the morning, right? So I go, for example, and I am unclean. So let's say tomorrow morning is the Passover feast, but I'm unclean now, right? Evening is already past. It's nighttime here. It's 9 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. Can I then go to Moses and Aaron and say, listen, last night was unclean, but it's morning now. It's a new day. I can keep the feast?
No.
It can't happen because you'll be unclean until the evening.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the evening of those who could not keep the Passover was moved 50 days on because they missed it by a day. But if your Sabbath starts in the morning, your logic has to now make sense. Aaron has to say, yes, you can, because the day starts in the morning. Totally violating God's law and how days work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see the contradiction?
Yeah, I see a question. Kingdom over culture. We'll get to how we understand the 7 days. 7 days hasn't changed since the beginning of creation, so we can go all the way back and do a teaching on that another time, but that's really simple to calculate. Is that what he's asking? Like, how do we know what days we're on according to the times they've changed? The Gregorian calendar, it's still a 7-day period, right? So even if you go, we've done a teaching on this, even if you go all the way back to Genesis, you can still establish the 7th or 8th, whatever day you want to establish. That's the Sabbath day in general is easy to figure out. We're just trying to establish when the Sabbath starts, right? Whether it's morning or evening.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about that. It doesn't matter what the names are. If they're Greek deities, they can even be Babylonian deities. You still can number them. It's still numbered. Even if you go in today, modern day culture, they ask you, what is Sunday? It's the first day of the week. You still have the numbers in there.
Days in those times was numbered. The first, second, third, fourth, fifth day. They had numbers on them. Because the day also in the Hebrew, we'll see with the Hebrew day, the word has got a number also connected to it. But it's not like we have days Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Those are all different, actually pagan names. But that's off topic. All we are focusing on, I know we're going to read many things. You're going to have many questions of what we are reading. We are solely trying to establish when a day starts, so that we can tell our brothers and sisters, our fellow members, the body in Messiah, listen guys, the Sabbath actually starts in the evening and not in the morning. We want to become one in accord, right? We don't want to be separated body. This body has to do good arm work and good footwork and good leg work. We have to work together. So we're edifying brothers so that we all can come into truth, so that our sons and daughters can also start prophesying. That only happens when we're all one in accord. Okay. So we're going to now, is there any questions so far, Adrian, that you see?
No, I just wanted to address that one question because I've heard a lot of people ask that. How do we know what day is what? And you just explained it. So that's what I was trying to say. Same thing.
Okay. So I just want to say something very important, right? When we come to the knowledge of the good, no one comes to the Messiah unless God calls you and teaches you in his ways, and then you get sanctified. Then only the blood of the Messiah can wash you clean. We have a problem and I understand this problem, right? I always warn people about this, is when someone comes to the knowledge of the truth, they realize how much they have been lied to. And then that causes something in someone's mind to say, well, I've been lied about everything. I have to now go and redo everything. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. That causes people to fall off and not stay on the narrow path. You can't go to the right or to the left. You must stay on this narrow path. Some of my brothers and sisters fall off and they go into doctrines that I've never even heard of. And I'm like, Father, please, please don't blind me like that. I never want to be blind like that. That my pride takes over so much that I think that everything has changed. There's truth in everything. We have to distinguish it. We have to discern both good and evil in the scriptures. Not be on milk, but digest the meat. So far what we've read that you are unclean until the evening. We read that the feast starts at evening and ends at evening, and that's how you calculate days. So far, it's undeniable. How people go past that, I do not know. It's beyond me to explain it. But it's prideful and boastfulness because they think they've been lied to so much that they have to reestablish a whole day.
I agree 100%. Scripture is simple if we can again. I'm speaking from coming from the indoctrination of the Christian church for 29 years. Emmanuel could speak on this. Again, he had to find this same faith. But the one thing that I can say out of all of my brothers and sisters is we don't argue amongst ourselves. There's not very much that happens unless it's someone that's deliberately trying to stir up trouble, because we're doing this right here. This is what establishes the matter, the truth. So as long as we're doing this is what Jason's talking about. That fine line that we walk on through the scripture, it becomes broader and broader and easier to walk on the more your knowledge increases. The less you'll be able to be swayed by every wind of doctrine that comes around. And again, all of us had to go through this. We all had to come out of the lies. We all had to put what we thought we believed aside and study. That's the only way to come to truth. And if you truly want truth, you have to be willing to study it. That's the whole point. That's why we're doing this.
So I just wanted to say, most people that are very zealous when it comes to the Shabbat and getting everything right, they find out that because the Babylonian system, when the children of Israel got exiled for 70 years in Babylon, the Babylonian system was from evening to evening. They say because of the Babylonians kept it evening to evening, therefore it's a Babylonian tradition and it's a pagan way. I just wanted to mention that the Egyptians worshipped the sun god, Amun-Ra, and they kept their days from Monday to Monday. So you can look at it both ways. It's not about the paganism that the other nations practice, but we got to look into the scripture and how the scripture defines a day. Doesn't matter what the other people do. You just got to look into the scripture. So if that like takes you aside from keeping it evening to evening because the Babylonian system, then you should also be taken aside and have balanced scales when it comes to when the sun sets, because the sun rises because of the Egyptians. That's it.
I want to answer a quick question for the person that's asking, isn't the Messiah our Sabbath and our rest? A lot of believers believe that because the Messiah said he is the master of the Sabbath, that he changed the Sabbath. I would strongly recommend Go read Hebrews chapter 4, verse 9 and 10. It's clearly stated that if the Messiah had given us another day of rest, he would have mentioned it, right? He would have told us. He didn't. He kept the Sabbath. So that's just another thing that the Christian church has indoctrinated everybody with. Again, that's not what the scripture is saying. So just cover
The
that in
logic
a,
behind that is,
yeah,
sorry, Adrian.
I'm just trying to address that one thing because I know people ask that a lot, and that doesn't change the day. You have to think about, what did Yahweh say? That we are to rest on the seventh day. That's one of the first things that we were reading, right? That this day of Sabbath is to be kept from evening until evening as a perpetual, everlasting covenant with the children of Israel. So it cannot change. The Messiah can't come along and change it after Yahweh spoke it and said, this is what it's going to be forever. So that's the best way to look at it.
You know, if the Messiah came, and he was our example, our perfect, unblemished lamb, he was our example, we walk like he walked, he would have kept the Sabbath on a different day. But he did not. Even after his resurrection, the apostles all kept the Sabbath. Did someone forget to inform the apostles that the Sabbath day changed? That the Messiah is now the Sabbath? Paul is years after the resurrection of the Messiah, our brother Paul. He still keeps the Sabbath. So
28 times
you must
in the
make
book of
that
Acts.
logical sense to you. Because if let's say the Messiah is not your example and Paul is your example, you should be keeping the Sabbath as Paul kept the Sabbath.
Yep.
All right. There's just one last thing before we move on to the next scripture, which was someone asked about the moon cycles, because I saw a couple questions about the moon. So when it comes to should you calculate the Shabbat to the moon cycles, there's actually 3 different calendars, and they all differ. And what they differ in is, when you look at the moon, it's a 30-day period, but depending on the month of the moon, there is 1 or 2 transitionary days where the moon does not give its light, where it's completely dark and you cannot see the moon. And different calendars count those as actual days when there's no moon, and others don't count it, and they just take it out of the month. So that also takes away from calculating the right Shabbat with the moon cycles, depending on which calendar you use. There's also a bunch of other details that I'm not gonna get into, but those are the main things. There's 2 transition days, 1 or 2, and that takes away from the calendar and the calculation of the Shabbat. I hope that answers the question.
I can also sometime, not now because we're trying to just establish a day, this is going a bit off topic, but sometimes show you that following the moon cycle will make you not keep the correct days. But that's a whole different topic. We're just trying to establish the day when a day starts. This is solely what this is about. So I don't want to go up into different topics. It's going to make the teaching way longer. So let's carry on. Exodus 12, verse 1 through 42. Sorry, Emmanuel, it's a lot of reading. I just want to read in context so people can see it's not cherry picking,
Exodus 12, verse?
Chapter 1, all the way to 42.
I don't even know where my Exodus is.
Genesis, Exodus.
Yes. I know. Calm down. Exodus, you gotta repeat the verse, man.
Exodus 12,
Yeah.
chapter 12, verse 1 through 42.
42. Okay. Mute and everything.
Oh, mute, sorry.
And volume.
Sorry, I must mute.
1 to 42. Okay. Okay. Let me just grab a drink. Hold on. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This new moon is the beginning of the new moons for you. It is the first new moon of the year for you. Speak to all the congregation of Israel, saying, On the 10th day of this new moon, each one of them is to take for himself a lamb, according to the house of his father, a lamb for a household. And if the household is too small for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next to his house take it according to the number of the beings, according to each man's need. You make your count for the lamb. Let the lamb be perfect, a year old. Take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th of the same new moon. Then all the assembly of the congregation of Israel shall slay it between the evenings, and they shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel and the house where they eat it. And they shall eat all the flesh on that night, roasted in fire with unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it. Do not eat it raw, nor boiled at all with water, but roasted in fire, its head with its legs and the inward parts. And do not leave it until morning, and what remains of it until morning you are to burn it with fire. And this is how you eat it: your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is a Pesach of Yahweh, or Passover. And I shall pass through the land of Egypt on that night, and shall strike all the firstborns in the land of Egypt, both man and beast, and all the mighty ones of Egypt. I shall execute judgment. I am Yahweh. The blood shall be as a sign for you on the house where you are. And when I see the blood, I shall pass over you, and let the plague not come on you or destroy you, when I strike the land of Egypt. And this day shall become to your remembrance, and you shall celebrate as a festival to Yahweh throughout your generations. Celebrate as a festival and an everlasting law. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Indeed, on the first day you cause unleavened to cease from your house. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that being shall be cut off from Israel. And on the first day it is set apart gathering, and on the 7th day you have a set apart gathering. No work at all is done. Only that which is eaten by every being, that alone is prepared by you. And you shall guard the festival of Matazot, for on the same day I brought your divisions out of the land of Egypt, and you shall guard this day throughout your generations, an everlasting law. In the 1st month, on the 14th day of the new moon, in the evening you shall eat unleavened bread, until the 21st day of the new moon on the evening. For 7 days no leaven is to be found in your house. For if anyone eats what is leavened, the same being shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether sojourner or native in the land. Do not eat that which is leavened. In all your dwellings you are to eat unleavened bread. And Moses called for all the elders of Israel, and said to them, Go out and take lambs for yourself according to the clans, and slay a Passover. And you shall take a bunch of hips and dips in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the 2 doorposts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out of the door of this house until morning. And Yahweh shall pass on to smite the Egyptians, and shall see the blood on the lintel and the 2 doorposts. And Yahweh shall pass over the door, and not allow the destroyer to come into your house to smite you. And you shall guard this word as a law for you and your sons forever. And it shall be, when you come to the land which Yahweh gives to you, as he promised, that you shall guard this service. And it shall be, when the children say to you, What does this service mean to you? Then you shall say, It is a Passover slaughtering of Yahweh, who passed over the house of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our household. And the people bowed their heads and did obeisance. And the children of Israel went away and did so, as Yahweh has commanded Moses and Aaron. So they did. And it came to be midnight, that Yahweh struck all the firstborns in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat in his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not a dead one. And he called Moses and Aaron by night, and said, Arise, go forth from the midst of my people, both you and the children of Israel, and go, serve Yahweh, as you have said. Take both your flocks and your herds, as you have said, and go, then you shall bless me too. And the Egyptians were strong on people to hasten to send them away out of the land, for they said, We are all dying. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, having their kneading bowls bound up in their garments on their shoulders. And the children of Israel had done according to the word of Moses, and they asked from the Egyptians objects of silver and objects of gold and garments. And Yahweh gave the people grace in the eyes of the Egyptians, so that they gave them what they asked, and they plundered the Egyptians. And the children of Israel set out from Rameses to Sukkot, about 600,000 men on foot, besides the little ones, and a mixed multitude went up with them, also flocks and herds, and very much livestock. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they had brought out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, since they were driven out of Egypt, and had not been able to delay, nor had they prepared food for themselves. And the sojourner of the children of Israel who lived in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to be at the end of the 430 years, on that same day, it came to be that all the divisions of Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt. And in a night, it is a night of watches unto Yahweh for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. This is the night of watches unto Yahweh for all the children of Israel throughout all the generations.
Thanks, Emmanuel. So you're probably wondering why I'm reading this, and I want to show you how logical it is. This in itself alone is just become so obvious that things become laughable, but we have to understand it's our brothers and sisters, so we have to give them understanding and edify the body, right? So you're going to start wondering why we're reading this, and because earlier we read about keeping the Passover, and this is the origins of the Passover, right? This is where it starts. When the lamb was on the doorpost and Yahweh sent an angel of death, let's say, call it that, and it killed the firstborn of all the children who didn't have the blood on their doorpost. But Yahweh says, in this day, I will send this angel. What day? When does he send the angel? At night. It's in that same day. But let me explain. Let's carry on. Exodus 12 verse 2. This month shall be unto you a beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year unto you. Which day? The day of that moon, that you see that moon, remember? At evening. Okay? So now Exodus 12 verse 6. And you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. In the evening, why in the evening? You bring your lamb without spot and blemish. They kept it in captive. It was inspected in the day, and by evening it was killed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now look at this. Exodus 12 verse 12. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night, and I will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And against all the gods of the Egypt I will execute judgment. I am Yahweh. So in that night, meaning after the Passover, that night, in that same day, he will smite Egypt, correct?
Yep.
Let's go. Exodus 12 verse. And this day shall be unto you a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations. You shall keep it a feast by the ordinance forever. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread. Even the first day you shall put away leaven out of your houses. For whosoever eats leavened bread from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Question: when will they have to remove the leavened bread? In the morning or in the evening when the day starts? This is going to be answered as we carry on. Verse 16. And in the first day there shall be a holy congregation, and in the 7th day there shall be a holy congregation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat, that only may be done of you. Verse 17. And you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this self-same day have you brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. So you will eat the unleavened bread, you'll remove it before evening starts, and in that same day you will eat it in a hurry, quickly, because in that same day you will be removed out of Egypt. That means in that same day, Israel will be walking out of Egypt away to the sea where the sea opened up for them, correct? So in that note, in that same day, I will bring you out of Egypt. What day? The next morning? No, that night, because the day starts at evening. They ate the unleavened bread, and the Passover, while it's still daytime, the unleavened bread was for the journey, because the that night is the next day. You'll see it as we carry on. And in the first day there shall be a holy congregation. What? Where was I?
You read 8. I think you were at 17 and going into 18.
Okay, 18. And in the first month, on the 14th day of the month, it is on evening, you shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month at evening. So you'll eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Remember how we said the law of uncleanness, evening until evening? How do they calculate days? From evening until evening. Verse 29. And it came to pass that at midnight, remember in that same, prior it said, in that same day I will lead you out of Egypt. Right? In that same
14th
day.
Yep.
Okay? And it came to pass at midnight, Yahweh smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. The same day. Why? Because night is that same day. From the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne, unto the firstborn of captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the cattle. Verse 30. And Pharaoh rose up at night, he and his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt. For there was not a house where there was no one dead. Question. God said, in that same day I will smote the Egyptians. When is that day? Is it at night? Yes. At nighttime, in that same day, he smote the Egyptians. That's why they had to fry the or barbecue the Passover lamb quickly. They have to make the breads quickly in a hurry, gird it, and eat of it, because in that same day, nighttime, that day is night. The next day, nighttime, evening. At midnight, he smote the children, and Pharaoh and them woke up, right? Let me read it again so we can discuss the next couple of verses. And it came to pass that at midnight, meaning that same day that Yahweh said he will smite the Egyptians, I smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. Verse 30. And Pharaoh rose up at night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt. So when did Pharaoh wake up? The next morning when it was the same day? No. At night, because it's part of the day. Verse 31. And he called Moses and Aaron by night, and said, rise up and get the first from among my people, both you and your children of Israel, and go serve Yahweh as you have said. When are they rising up to leave? In the same day. Yahweh said, in this day I will lead you out of Egypt. I will smite the firstborn of Egypt. Was it daytime sunlight day? No, it was nighttime. Why does he call it in this day? Because it started at the evening when they ate the bread and ate the Passover lamb. Put the blood on the door. By the time the blood was on the door, they were in that new day. Evening till evening. So evening, the afternoon, late afternoon when the sun set, that day starts. In that day, at nighttime, Yahweh smotes the Egyptians. Right?
Also, really quickly, also people oftentimes will say, well, didn't Moses and Aaron do something wrong? No, because Pharaoh summoned them and the angel had already come through the camp and smote all the Egyptians. This is why Pharaoh is summoning Aaron and Moses at this point.
Yes, they woke up with a great cry in the cities at nighttime. It tells you at nighttime. That is the day. Yahweh said, in this day, I will smite the Egyptians. Was this day that Yahweh called the morning, or was it night? Night. It was night. Okay. Verse 41. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, that all the host of Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt. When did they go out? It says, and it came to pass in that same day, all the children of Israel went out of the hosts of Egypt. What day? When did they leave? In the morning or at night? They left at night. When he called Moses and Aaron and said, take your people and go serve your God, leave. They're leaving at nighttime. In that day, because nighttime is the beginning of that day. It's the same day as the next morning.
Also, keep in mind in
That
verse
is why
11,
this feast is kept from evening until evening.
they were instructed in verse 11 to be girded up. They were instructed to have their shoes on, their feet, their staff in their hand, and ready to eat and make haste as well, because Yahweh knew he was bringing them out in the middle of the night.
Remember it said prior, Yahweh said, in this day I will save you out of Egypt. If your Sabbath starts in the morning, that means Yahweh had to lead them out of Egypt in the daytime. He didn't. He led them out of Egypt At night time, because the day starts at evening. In this day, the period of night, which is part of the new day, right? I will lead you out of Egypt. So the angel smotes the firstborn of all the Egyptians. Pharaoh calls Moses and Aaron at night time, as we read, and said, leave, take your people and go. That's why they were girded. In that self same day, he led them out of Egypt. Let me read it again. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the self same day, it came to pass that all the hosts of Yahweh went out from the land of Egypt. Question. In that self same day, when did they leave? In the morning or at night? Well, they left at
Night.
night because that's when the day starts. That's the self same day. If the day started in the morning, they had to leave in the morning. It wasn't the same day. See the contradiction? Verse 42. To be much observed unto Yahweh for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. This is the night of that Yahweh to be observed in all the children of Israel throughout their generations. Right? Question. This is speaking about the night of the Passover, when Yahweh smote the Egyptians. How do we keep it? Because it says in this same day we keep it. We keep it according to what we read earlier, from evening until evening, correct? So when does the day start? From evening until evening.
Also, we see
you
it
guys
was
are
on the 14th day as well. All of this took place on the 14th day, leading into the 15th day at night.
Yes. You will see that by the time Pharaoh goes and chases after the children of Israel, when Yahweh hardens Pharaoh's heart, he reaches them in the morning. And that morning is also called, or remember Yahweh said, in that day I will lead them out of Egypt. That day started at evening, at nighttime. That's why he called them at nighttime. That's why the angel of death came and killed the firstborn. Because he said, on this day I will execute my judgment on Egypt. What day? Was it the next morning? Because if a day starts in the morning, it means it had to happen the next morning. But it happened that self same day at night. Okay? So you're gonna have to pull up. I just want to reference something. I know a lot of people don't like this. I want to reference Jubilees later on. We're getting there. Chapter 49. Adrian, while you look it up, go to Exodus 14:24, Emmanuel. Or let me quickly read it because it's just one passage. Exodus 14, verse 24. And it came to pass that in the morning, which Yahweh looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the hosts of the Egyptians. Why did Yahweh look upon them in the morning? Because they fled in that same day. At night they traveled, and when it was morning, the Egyptians were on their heels, and Yahweh looks out of the pillar of fire to them. Can you see that they evacuated the same day at night? Because that's where a day starts. That's why it says, in the morning, Yahweh looks through the pillars of fire and sees the Egyptians troubling the Israelites. Why? Because he left them out from evening until evening. He says, in this same day I will smite them. That means he smote them according to this at night. So is night not part of the day anymore? What is your argument here? Because now if you're telling me that the Sabbath starts in the morning, it's not the same day that he smote the Egyptians. That has to be the next day. Contradicting the words of Yahweh. Listen carefully to what I'm telling you, people. Contradicting the words of Yahweh. Yahweh said, in that same self day, I led the children out of Egypt. Was that day when the sun was rising, or was it at night? Be careful when you say these things, contradicting the words of your Creator. You guys are playing with fire that will burn you. We have to be God-fearing people. We cannot just make stupid assumptions about this. This is Yahweh speaking. Yahweh, our Father, said, I will lead you out of Egypt the self-same day. If your day starts in the morning, you are contradicting the words of the Most High. Be careful what you say and how you say it. If you say it in ignorance, be careful what you say and how you say it. Do not let pride take over you. So, Here in Exodus 14:24 just proves that Israelites were taken out of Egypt when the Pharaoh in the south day at night, that day, was smote. The Israelites are traveling, running away, going up to the Red Sea. And in that self same day, Yahweh looks through the pillar of fire and sees the Egyptians coming to the Israelites. Why? Because they were led out at night. In that day, when evening, when it started, when they ate the unleavened bread, Yahweh said, in this day I will lead you out. What day? The day started at evening. That's why they had to eat the unleavened bread in a hurry and the lamb in a hurry. And that's when the Egyptians' children died. God smote them by the angel of death, if you want to call it that. And then Pharaoh calls Moses and Aaron, says, go, leave. Why? Because Yahweh said, in this day, what day? At night, I will lead you out of Egypt. At night is called the day. Why? Because a day is 24 hours. It's from evening until evening. It doesn't have 12 hours. Okay?
You want me to read Jubilees 49, 10, and 11?
I want you to read from verse 1 to 3.
Okay.
Then you can read 10 and 11.
Okay, it says, remember the commandment which Yahweh commanded thee concerning the Passover, that thou shouldest celebrate it in this season on the 14th of the first month, that thou should unalive it before it is evening, and that they should eat it by night on the evening of the 15th from the time of the setting of the sun. For on this night, the beginning of the festival and the beginning of the joy, ye were eating the Passover in Egypt, when all of the powers of Manasseh had been let loose to slay all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh to the firstborn of the captive maid servant in the mill, and to the cattle. And this is a sign which Yahweh gave them. Into every house on the lintels on which they saw the blood of the lamb of the first year, in that house, that they should not enter to slay, but should pass by it, that all that should be saved that were in the house, because the sign of blood was on the lintels.
Okay, to recap, right? So they eat the unleavened bread and the lamb at evening, before the sun sets, right? And then they're eating, and then Yahweh smotes them at nighttime. Then Pharaoh tells them, leave, go. And in the morning before the sun sets, Yahweh looks back through the pillar of fire and he sees the Egyptians coming after the Israelites. So it's 100% proof that it's nighttime, because in the same day I will lead you out of Egypt. He led them out at nighttime. If your day starts in the morning, you have a huge contradiction here. See the problem? Okay? So this is concerning the Passover. So far, we'll just carry on with the feast days, and I think then this live can end, and then we'll go into the second part later, Adrian.
Okay, I just want to read these two verses here while we're in chapter 49 of Jubilee. It says, let the children of Israel come and observe the Passover on the day of the fixed time of the 14th day of this month, between the evenings, from the third part of the day to the third part of the night, for the 2 portions of the day that are given of the light, and a third part of the evening. This is that which Yahweh commanded thee, that thou shouldest observe it between the evenings.
Yes. All feasts is from evening to evening. Your uncleanliness is from evening to evening. All the riddles in scripture are from evening until evening. We'll go to the riddles now. I just want to quickly jump to Matthew, because we're on the Passover topic. Jump to Matthew 26. We're going to read verse 17 through 20. Let me just...
Okay, Matthew 26, 17 through 20. And on the first day of the unleavened bread, the disciples came to Yeshua, saying, where do you wish us to prepare for you to eat the Pesach? And he said, go into the city to the certain man, and say to him, the teacher says, my time is near. I am to perform the Pesach at your house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Yeshua had ordered them, and prepared the Pesach. And when evening came, he sat down with the 12.
Okay, so here we have an example of the Messiah eating the Passover with his apostles, right? It says, go and prepare the Passover. Go to this man's house. You'll find a man here. Go there and prepare the Passover. And when evening came, they sat down to eat it. Why? Because at that evening is when you eat the Passover. Not in the morning when it's a new day, according to people saying that the Sabbath starts in the daytime when the sun rises. No. So there's the example of our Messiah. If he's your example and your day starts in daytime, you have a problem here. Then the Messiah is no longer your example. You are leaning on your own understanding and interpreting scripture in your own ways. Okay? Now, we're going to go to the book of Numbers. Book of Numbers chapter... From Numbers chapter 9, verse 2 through 12. Let me just mute again.
Numbers chapter 2,
Numbers chapter 9, verse 2 through 12.
9, 2 to 12. 9, 2 to 12. Now let the children of Israel perform the Pesach at the appointed times, on the 14th day of the new moon between the evenings. Perform it at its appointed time, according to all its laws and right rulings you perform it. And Moshe spoke to the children of Israel, perform the Pesach. So they performed the Pesach on the 14th day of the first new moon between the evenings in the wilderness of Sinai, according to all that Yahweh commanded Moses. So the children of Israel did. But they were men who were defiled for a being of a man, so that they were not able to perform the Pesach on that day. So they came before Moses and Aaron on that day, and those men said to him, we are defiled for the being of a man. Why are we withheld from bringing near the offering of Yahweh at its appointed time among the children of Israel? And Moses said, wait, let me hear what Yahweh commands concerning you. And Yahweh spoke, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, when any male of you from your generation is unclean for a being, or is far away on a journey, he shall still perform the Pesach on the 14th day of the second new moon. Between the evenings they perform it. With unleavened bread and bitter herbs they eat it. They do not leave it until morning, and they do not break a bone of it, according to all the laws of the Pesach they perform it. Sorry.
Okay. So remember how I said why we went through the law of being unclean? People make the argument, yes, but they say, but Jason, you know what? The feast days are different days compared to how days are calculated, because the feast days are evening to evening, but a day starts in the morning. If that's the case, you have a problem, because here comes people that say, listen, Moses, Aaron, we touched the dead body, we are unclean. What will hinder us from keeping the feast? Because we are unclean, and according to the law, you're unclean until the evening, right? So the days are still calculated throughout scripture the same way, no contradiction and no confusion. So let's read it, Numbers 9 verse 6. And there were certain men who were defiled by the dead body of a man, that they could not keep the Passover on that day. And they came before Moses and before Aaron on that day. And those men said unto him, we are defiled by the dead body of a man. Wherefore are we kept back, that we may not offer any offering of Yahweh on his appointed season amongst the children of Israel? Verse 10. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, if any man of you or your posterity shall be unclean by reason of the dead body, or be in a journey far off, yet he shall keep the Passover of Yahweh. The 14th day of the second month at evening they shall keep it, and eat it with unleavened bread. So, if I come to Aaron and say, listen, Aaron, listen, I killed a pig today. I can't, and the feast is tonight. What do I do? Well, what would he say? The next morning you'll be clean. No, you'll be unclean until the evening. Right? Not until the morning. Because from evening until evening is a day. Whether you are unclean from evening until evening, whether you keep the feast from evening until evening, whether Yahweh creates from evening until evening. It's a 24-hour period. In the same way that we read that Pharaoh was led out of Egypt Israel was led out of Egypt because Pharaoh prosecuted them in that self same day. When did they leave? In the morning? Because it's now, according to you, a morning is the new day? No, they left at night in that same day. What is that same day? After they ate the unleavened bread and girded in a hurry, right? That evening, that's when it started. In that self same day, they were led out, but it was nighttime. See your contradiction there? These things you're going to have to start answering for yourself and come to the knowledge of understanding. So, the book of Nehemiah, let me quickly give you a background. Yahweh made a whole covenant with Israel, and every time that Israel broke his covenants, they were scattered out of the promised land, because in that promised land they had to keep the feast days and all the laws of Yahweh. And Yahweh said, if you don't keep them, I will scatter you out of the land. I will give this land to someone else. This happens over and over and over again. And every time Israel gets disobedient and they become fat and obese and they disregard God's law, Yahweh would send them a prophet to prophesy for them, warning them to turn back to Yahweh in his ways, because they will be kicked out of Egypt. Yahweh sends multiple prophets to warn them. And when the prophets warn them, yes, some of them turn back and they keep the feasts. And eventually this carries on for so long that they don't want to listen anymore. Jeremiah goes and warns them and they say, we will not listen to what you say, Jeremiah. That forces God to keep his own law, to write them a bill of divorce, right? That bill of divorce written is not giving them a chance to come back, because he divorces them. There's no more chance to come back. But every time he warns them of going out of the land, he gives them a prophet to warn them to come back. And if they repent, they can come back into the land. Now in Nehemiah, the time of Nehemiah, is when the Israelites were scattered in the lands, right? Nehemiah grows up in a king's temple and he serves a king. And Nehemiah starts thinking back of the times of Israel, and he wonders, how is it going with my brothers? And he calls the Israelites back. They all come to repentance, and they discover the scrolls of the Torah in the temple. And when they discover these scrolls, he calls the people and say, let's read these scrolls. And they discover for the first time, oh wow, we forgot to keep the feast. We must keep the feast and we must do this. And they start doing it according to the Torah. That is Nehemiah causing a repentance. And people don't realize how important this book of Nehemiah is. For if God did not call Nehemiah to do this, we would not have a Messiah coming out of the bloodline of Judah. So this is a very important book. I encourage people to study it. I'm just giving you background on Nehemiah, because we're going to be reading a verse in Nehemiah, showing you how people kept it when they repented and turned back. Okay? So, it's just 2 verses, Emmanuel, so I'll quickly read it. Nehemiah chapters 2 and 3. And Ezra, the priest, brought the law before the congregation, both of men and women, and all that could hear with understanding, upon the first day of the 7th month. And he read therein before the street that was before the water gate from the morning until midday, before the men of the woman, and these that could understand, and the ears of all the people who were attentive unto the book of the law. Question. It says here, Ezra the priest brought the law before the congregation. Why? Does it mean that the day started in the morning? No. The day started in the evening prior. The 7th day started the evening. He's only reading it in the daytime because they didn't have fire or spotlights. That's when the priest ministers, when the sun is up. That's when the priest accepts goats. That's when the sun is up, right? We read about it earlier in Leviticus 23. Okay? So let's quickly carry on with this. Let's go to Leviticus 19, verse 3 through 8. Oh, I must silence.
Leviticus 19, 3-8. Each one of you should fear his mother and his father, and guard my Shabbat. I am Yahweh your Elohim. Do not turn to idols, and do not make for yourself molded mighty ones. I am Yahweh your God. And when you slaughter slaughterings of peace offerings to Yahweh, slaughter it for your acceptance. it is eaten the same day you slaughter it, and on the next day that which is left on the third day is burned with fire. So if it's eaten at all on the third day, it is abominable, it is not accepted. And he who eats it bears its crookedness, because he has profaned the set-apart offering of Yahweh. That being shall be cut off from his people.
Okay, here's the question. Okay, Leviticus 19, verse 6. It shall be eaten the same day you offer it, and unto the morrow. And if you ought remain until the third day, it shall be burnt in fire. When does that third day end according to Scripture? In the morning or in the evening? Verse 7. And it shall be eaten in all the and it shall be eaten at all on the third day. It is abominable. It shall not be accepted. So when is the third day? When are you unclean, and when does the day start? How did they calculate this? Well, what we've just covered now. Evening. By the third day on the evening, you can't eat of it. Unclean. Can you guys see what I'm trying to show you? I hope so. I hope I'm articulating myself well enough.
Can I also read something?
Yes.
Yeah,
Just
very understandable.
something I
So I also read something back in the book of Nehemiah, which makes it very, very clear.
I'm still getting to that. Follow the teaching.
Okay, then I'll wait.
Yes.
I'll wait.
We're
Sorry.
still covering feast days.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll wait then.
Anyhow, it's very clear so far. And again, guys, this is just one of many parts. I'm sure by now, Jason's looking at his notes thinking, how are we going to cover all of this? We haven't even scratched the surface yet. All we're trying to establish right now is the fact if you're unclean or not, and how you're unclean and when you are considered clean. We covered the Passover and when they left Egypt. And Jason was talking about the pillars of fire and smoke and how that was the following day, the following morning, and establishing when the Sabbath begins and ends. So there's much more to cover. We've got plenty of other things to go over that'll still highlight this because it's literally written throughout all the scriptures. It's in nearly every book. You can see an example of this, as you've already seen. We've been all over the place, but even in the New Testament, in the book of Matthew that we just covered, it's very clear.
Okay, so just to clear up what I'm doing, I'm covering it in topics so you can understand, because we need these topics to understand the crucifixion. So I've covered when you're unclean until the evening, and I'm covering feast days now. Then we're going to go to the quails in the wilderness, and then we're going to go to the parables, and then we're going to go to Nehemiah where they are closing the gates, and then we're going to do the crucifixion. So I'm doing these in stages because we need all this background and knowledge to understand how the law and how a day works and how to calculate a day. So I'm just using some scriptures, like Emmanuel wanted to go to Nehemiah now and talk about the gates and people selling things on the Sabbath. That's still later in the teaching. We're getting to that. I'm just covering these in certain topics at the moment so we can have understanding throughout the whole scripture. So this is why I said we might be doing this in parts, because it's very long. And after this part we're doing now, we might end the live, and then when we start again, we'll probably start with the quails and carry on there. And then we'll go to the crucifixion laws and all of those things and parables. So we're just trying to keep it within topics. So the first topic we covered, when are you unclean and how long are you unclean for? The second topic we are covering, when does a feast day start or a Sabbath day start? Right, and then we'll start going to other things. I hope you understand. So it says here, remember what we just read in Leviticus 19:6. Open up at Jubilees 21:10 quickly, Adrian. While you open up there, I just want to read this again in Leviticus 19, verse 6. It shall be eaten the same day you offer it, and on the morrow, and if it ought remain until the third day, it shall be burnt in the fire. And if be eaten at all in the third day, it shall be abominable. It shall not be accepted. So it shall be eaten on the first day from evening until evening. On the second day from evening until evening. And on the third day, that evening, you can't eat eat of it anymore because it's unclean. Right? Jubilees 21:10 will explain it for us. Quickly read it.
Says, and eat this meat on the day and on the second day, and let not the sun on the second day go down upon it till it is eaten, and let nothing be left over on the third day, for it is not acceptable, it is not approved. And let hold on a second. And let no longer be eaten, and at all whoever eat thereof will bring sin upon themselves. For thus I have found it written in the books of my forefathers, and in the words of Enoch, and in the words of Noah.
Okay. And eat this meat on that day and the second day, from evening until evening, correct? And let the sun not go down on it on the second day. Why? Because if the sun goes down on this meat on the second day, you are in the third day. Because on the third day, if you eat of it, it's abominable. So when does the day end and start? Evening. Let me read it again. Catch it, people. And eat its meat on that day and on the second day. And let not the sun on the second day go down upon it till it is eaten. And let nothing be left over for the third day. On the second day, if the day is from first day is evening until evening. The second day is evening and evening. The evening of the second day, if the sun goes down on it, what is it then? What day is it then? It's the third day.
And
That's
it's
why it's
defiled.
abominable.
Yep.
Yes. Clear enough? I hope you understand. It's very, very clear. This is what we just read earlier in Leviticus 19, verse 3 through 7. This is part of the law. As you can read about this in Jubilee, where we are now, you can read it in the book, in Moses' books, like we just read. You can also read about it in Enoch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you cannot eat of it in the second, do not let the sun go down on it the second day. What does that mean? That means on the second day, if the sun goes down on it, there's a problem. You are now in the third day. Hope you understand. Okay. Go to Leviticus. These are one verses. I'll quickly read them, Emmanuel. I want to try and wrap this part of the feast days and eating offerings and stuff like that. Wrap it up quickly. Oh shit, I can't. This is halfway in this feast day thing. So we might still be here for a while, Adrian, on this topic.
I'm fine by that. I'm good. I'm good to go, man.
Okay. Leviticus 6 verse 20.
Me to read it?
This is yeah, you can read it for us.
It says, "This is the offering of Aaron and of his sons, which they shall offer unto Yahweh in the day when he is anointed. The 10th part of an ephod on fine flour for meat offering perpetual, half of it in the morning and half thereof at night."
When do the Levites give offerings? When are the offerings of the Levites?
Are you asking me or are you asking the people?
No, the people in the comments. I want them to think. In the day, when your offerings can be expected, in the morning, you can't do it at night time, right? And then half of it in the evening again, because it has to be in one day. So at that morning and that evening ends, the day ends.
Mm-hmm.
Hope you understand. Leviticus 17 verse 15 through 17. I'm muting myself.
Am I reading? Who's reading?
Okay. Leviticus 17, 15 through
16.
you gotta,
17, 15 through 17.
I don't have a 17. Okay, that's
Me either.
fine.
7, 15 through 17.
Leviticus
Oh.
7.
7.
Yes.
He said
Leviticus 7,
17.
verse 15 to
Okay.
17.
Okay.
He said 17.
As the flesh of the slaughtering of his peace offering for thanksgiving, it is eaten the same day it is offered. He does not leave any of it until morning. And if the slaughtering he brings is a vow or a voluntary offering, it is eaten the same day that he brings the slaughtering, and what is left of it's eaten the next day. But whatever is left of the flesh of the slaughtering on the third day is burned with fire.
When does this third day end, like we read it earlier and in Jubilees?
Lost you.
Sorry, guys. So, like we read in Jubilees and the prior chapters, when does this third day end? When the sun goes down on the second day. Why? Because that is the third day. When the sun goes down on the second day, that's the end of the second day. The third day starts. In the same way that the day, in the same day at night, Yahweh brought them out of Egypt. Am I still muted?
No, you're good.
Oh, I see someone says muted.
No, I think that was from before when you guys were switching over.
Okay. Now, you don't have Jubilees there, huh?
No, I don't.
I want to show you something interesting in Jubilees. And I know for people that don't like the Apocrypha, I know, but most people that are arguing about when the Sabbath starts are well educated in the Apocrypha. I just want to show you some things in Jubilees, right? Concerning these feast days and stuff. So we'll be reading chapter 2. It's a lot of reading, Adrian. Verse
Okay.
1 to 33.
Hold on, I'm gonna have to highlight it because I'm reading it from the computer and it's hard to find the lines. Okay, it says, "And the angel of the presence spake to Moses according to the word of Yahweh, saying, Write the complete history of creation, how in 6 days Yahweh Elohim finished all of his work and all that he created, and kept the Sabbath on the seventh day, and hallowed it for all ages, and appointed it as a sign for his works. For on the first day he created the heavens which are above, and the earth and the waters, and all the spirits which serve before him, the angel of the presence, and the angel of the sanctification, and the angels of the spirit of fire, and the angels of the spirits of the winds, and the angels of the spirits of the clouds, and of the darkness, and of the snow and hail, and of the hoarfrost, and the angels of the voice of thunder, and of the lightning, and the angels of the spirits of cold, and of heat, and of winter, and of spring, and of autumn, and summer, and all the spirits of his creatures which are in the heavens on the earth. He created the abyss and the darkness, the eventide, which is night, and the light, dawn and day, which he prepared in the knowledge of his heart. And thereupon he saw his works, and he praised him, and lauded before him on account of all of his works. For 7 great works did he create on the first day. And upon the second day he created the firmament in the midst of the waters, and the waters were divided. On that day, half of them went up above, and half of them went down below the firmament that was in the midst over the face of the whole earth. And this was the work of Yahweh that he created on the second day. And on the third day he commanded the waters to pass from the face of the whole earth into one place, and the dry land to appear. And the waters did so as he commanded them, and they retired from off of the face of the earth, and into one place outside of this firmament, and the dry land appeared. And on that day he created for them all the seas according to their separate gathering places, and all the rivers, and all the gatherings of the waters in the mountains, and on all of the earth, and on all of the lakes, and all of the dew on the earth, and the seed which is sown, and all sprouting things, and fruit-bearing trees, trees of wood, and of the Garden of Eden, in Eden, and all the plants after their kind. These 4 great works Yahweh created in the 3rd day, and on the 4th day he created the sun, the moon, and the stars, and set them in the firmament of heaven to give light upon all the earth, to rule over the day and the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Yahweh appointed the sun to be the great sign of the earth for the days, and for the Sabbaths, and for the months, and for the feasts, and for the years, and for the Sabbath of years, and for the Jubilees of all seasons of the years. And it divided the light, and it divided the light from the darkness, and for prosperity, that all things might prosper which shoot up from the earth and grow from the ground. And he divided, verse 11. These 3 kinds he made on the 4th day, and on the 5th day he created the great sea monsters in the depths of the water. For these were the first things of flesh that were created by his hands, the fish, and everything that moves in the waters, and everything that flies, the birds all after their kind. And the sun rose above them to prosper them, and above everything that was on the earth, and everything that shoots out of the earth, and all fruit-bearing trees, and all flesh. These 3 kinds he created on the 5th day, and on the 6th day he created all the animals on the earth, and all cattle, and everything that moves on the earth. And after all of this he created man and woman, and created he them, and gave them dominion over all that is upon the face of the earth, that are in the seas, and over everything that flies, and over the beasts, and over the cattle, and over everything that moves on the earth, and over the whole earth, and over all of that he gave him dominion. And these 4 kinds he created on the 6th day, and they were gathered 22 kinds. And he finished all of his work on the 6th day. And that is in the heavens, and on the earth, and in the seas, and in the abysses, and in the light, and in the darkness, and everything. And he gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day, that we should work 6 days, but keep the Sabbath day on the 7th day from all work. And all of the angels of the presence, and all of the angels of sanctification, these 2 great classes, he hath bidded us to keep the Sabbath with him in heaven and on earth. And he said unto us, Behold, I will separate unto myself a people from among all peoples, and they shall keep the Sabbath day, and I will sanctify them unto myself as my people, and I will bless them. And I will have, as I have sanctified the Sabbath day, and do sanctify it unto myself, even so I will bless them, that they shall be my people, and I will be their Elohim. And I have chosen the seed of Jacob from amongst all that I have seen, and I have written him down as my firstborn son, and I have sanctified him unto myself forever and ever, and I will teach them the Sabbath day, and they may keep the Sabbath thereon from all work. And thus he created therein a sign in accordance, which they should keep the Sabbath with us on the 7th day, to eat and to drink, and to bless him who created all things, as he blessed and sanctified unto himself a peculiar people above all peoples, and that they should keep the Sabbath day together with us. And he caused his commands to ascend as a sweet savor, acceptable before him all the days. There were 22 heads of mankind from Adam to Jacob, and 22 kinds of work were made until the 7th day, This is blessed and holy, and the former also is blessed and holy. And this one serves with that one for sanctification and blessing. And to Jacob and his seed he was granted that they should always be blessed as the holy ones of the first testimony and the law. Even he had sanctified a blessing the Sabbath day on the seventh day. He created the heaven and the earth and everything he created in 6 days, and Yahweh made the seventh day holy for all of his works. Therefore he commanded on his behalf that whosoever does any work therein shall be unalived, and he that defiles it shall surely die. Wherefore do thou command the children of Israel to observe this day, that they may keep it holy, and not do thereon any work or defile it, as it is holier than all other days. And whoever profanes it shall surely die, and whosoever does therein any work shall surely die eternally. That the children of Israel may observe this day throughout their generations, and not be rooted out of the land, for it is a holy day and blessed day. And everyone who observes and keeps the Sabbath thereon from all of his work will be holy and blessed throughout all of his days, like unto us. Declare and say unto the children of Israel the law of this day, both that they should keep the Sabbath thereon, and that they should not forsake it. It in the error of their hearts, and it is not lawful to do any work therein, which is unseemly to do thereon their own pleasure, and they that should not prepare thereon anything to be eaten or drunk, and to draw water, or to bring or take out therein throughout their gates, and burden unseemly to do thereon and burden which they not prepared for themselves on the 6th day in their dwellings. And they should not bring in or take out from the house on that day, for that day is more holy and blessed than any Jubilee day of the Jubilees. On this we kept Sabbath in the heavens before it was made known to any flesh to keep Sabbath thereon the earth. And the Creator of all things blessed it, but he did not sanctify all peoples and nations to keep the Sabbath thereon, but Israel alone. Them alone he permitted to eat and drink, and to keep the Sabbath thereon on the earth. And the Creator of all things blessed this day which he had created for blessings and holiness and glory above all days. This law and testimony was given to the children of Israel as a law forever unto their generations. I'll be right back.
Thanks, Adrian. I know it's a mouthful and a lot of reading. I want you to understand what we've just read, and we can read this in Genesis 2, but I'm reading this before we even carry on to the other things. A Sabbath starts, you're not allowed to prepare food or do anything on the Sabbath because it starts at the evening. Do not think that you can start preparing your food at night for the next day because you think the Sabbath starts at sunrise. Note how we've just read how Yahweh and his angels keep the Sabbath before it was made known to man to keep it. It is a statute forever in all your generations. If Yahweh and his angels keep it from evening until evening, and you keep it from morning until morning, or morning till wherever, you are transgressing when Yahweh and his angels starts keeping it. So I want to show you this and read it slowly. A couple of highlights I want you to understand here. On the 4th day, he created the sun and the moon and the stars. Verse 8. And he set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon all the earth. Right? On that day, he created the sun, moon, and stars to give light on the earth. Doesn't mean that when the sun now appears, that is now the first day. No. The first day is a 24-hour period. Okay? Let's go down. Let's go down. Verse 18. And all the angels of his presence and all the angels of his sanctification, those with great classes, he has bidden us to keep the Sabbath with him in heaven and on earth. So that Yahweh and his angels keep the Sabbath. And he said unto us, the angels, behold, I will separate unto myself a people from amongst the peoples, and these shall keep my Sabbath day, evening until evening. And I will sanctify them unto myself as a people, and I will bless them as I have sanctified the Sabbath day, and do sanctify it unto myself. Even so will I bless them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. Verse 20. And I have chosen thy seed Jacob from among all that I have seen, and I have written him down as my firstborn son, and I have sanctified him unto myself forever and ever. And I will teach them the Sabbath day, that they may keep thereon from all their works. And thus he created therein a sign, accordance with which they should keep Sabbath with us on the seventh day, to eat and to drink, and to bless him, and created all things. He shall be blessed and sanctified unto himself a peculiar people above all peoples, and that they should keep the Sabbath day with us. This angel is speaking in the first person, and guess who's this angel speaking, for those who know? So the angel is here speaking, right? Verse 23. So we have to keep the Sabbath with the angels. There were 22 heads of mankind from Adam to Jacob, 22 generations, right? And 22 kinds of work were made until the seventh day. This is a blessed Sabbath, and the former also is blessed and Kodesh, and this one serves with that one for sanctification and blessing. Verse 24. And to this Jacob and his seed it was granted that they should also be blessed and Kodesh, set apart ones of the first testimony of the Torah, even as he had sanctified and blessed the Sabbath day and the seventh day. Remember, keeping the Sabbath is a sign that you're walking in the ways of Yahweh, right? So my question becomes, when we read this, there's another piece I want to read, is when we read this, do you think now, because the Sabbath is set in stone forever, that now all of a sudden changes from morning until morning as the feast? What happens if your Sabbath day falls on the feast day, right? If you have a high Sabbath, it says he who breaks the Sabbath, regardless if it's a feast, should be killed. If your argument is that a feast day starts different contrary to a 7-day Sabbath, you have a problem. Because what if your Sabbath falls on the same day that you have a Passover? Which one would you keep now? Would you now keep it from morning until morning or evening until evening? God does not contradict himself. So let me read verse 28, 29, and 30 quickly. And everyone who observes it and keeps the Sabbath thereon from all his work will be set apart and blessed throughout all the days unto us. Declare and say unto the children of Israel, the Torah of this day, both that they should keep a Sabbath thereon, and that they should not forsake it in error of their hearts. And that it, remember, don't be wise in your own eyes. Don't think that you're now going to change the words of God. And that it is not lawful to do any work thereon, which is a seemly to do thereon to your own pleasure. And that they should not prepare thereon anything to be eaten or drunk. Question. Could they gather this? Could they gather any quails or manna or anything on the Sabbath day? They had to gather manna in the evening until the sun rised for the next day. Remember? This is why we are reading this. I want to show it to you because this was prepared for us. The book of Jubilees is a first-person account. It's an angel speaking. It's a first-person perspective of heavenly councils, if you did not know. So when Yahweh says, okay, you must keep my Sabbath day holy. For 6 days you will work, but on the 7th day you must rest. I will give you manna on the 6th day, a double portion. You can pick on the 6th day in the morning when he gives the manna, a double portion, right? Because on the 7th day you can't prepare food. You can't do that. You must still eat that night, that evening of the 6th day, which becomes the 7th day. Your manna is there for you to eat. If you had to gather then, would you be blotted out? What did the angel just say? Let's conclude what we've just read in Jubilees chapter 50, Adrian. All of it. 50 verse 1 through 13. And then I think we can stop here. There's a couple of more, but we
Jubilee
can...
51 through 13. And after this law I made known to thee the days of the Sabbath in the desert of Sinai, which is between Elim and Sinai. And I told of thee of the Sabbaths of the land on Mount Sinai, and I told thee of the Jubilee years and the Sabbaths of the years. But the year thereof I have not told thee, till you enter into the land which you are to possess. And I told thee, that just jacked me up, sorry. And the land also shall keep its Sabbaths while they dwell upon it, and they shall know that this is a Jubilee year. Wherefore I have ordained for thee the year, weeks, and the years of the Jubilees. There are 49 Jubilees from the days of Adam until this day, and 1 week and 2 years, and there are yet 40 years to come for learning the commandments of Yahweh until they pass over into the land of Canaan, crossing the Jordan to the west. And the Jubilee shall pass by unto Israel, is cleansed from all guilt of fornication and uncleanliness and pollution and sin and error, and dwells with confidence in all the land. And there shall be no more a Satan or any evil one, and the land shall be clean from that time forevermore. And behold, the commandment regarding the Sabbaths, I have written them down for thee, and all judgments of its law. 6 days shalt thou labor, but on the 7th day is the Sabbath day of Yahweh your Elohim. In it you shall do no manner of work, and your sons, and your menservants, and your maidservants, and your cattle, and your sojourner also who is with you. And the man that does any work on it shall die. Whosoever desecrates that day, whosoever lies with his wife, or whosoever says he will do something on it, that he will be set out on a journey thereon in regard to buy anything or sell anything. And whosoever draws water thereon, which he had not prepared for himself on the 6th day, and whosoever takes up a burden to carry it out of his tent or out of his house shall die. You shall not do no work whatsoever on the Sabbath day, save what you have prepared for yourselves on the 6th day, so as you eat and drink and rest to keep the Sabbath from all work on that day, and bless Yahweh your Elohim, who has given you a day of festival and a holy day, and a day of a holy kingdom for Israel in this day among their days forever. For great is the honor which Yahweh hath given to Israel, that they should eat and drink and be satisfied on this festival day. The rest therein from all labor, which belongs to labor of the children of men, save burning frankincense and bringing oblations and sacrifices before Yahweh 4 days and 4 Sabbaths, not 4 as in the number 4, just 4. This work alone shall be done on the Sabbath day in the sanctuary of Yahweh your Elohim, that they may atone for Israel with sacrifice continually from day to day for a memorial, well-pleasing before Yahweh, and he may receive them always from the day to day according all that thou hast been commanded. And every man who does any work therein, or goes on a journey, or tills his farm, whether he is in his house or any other place, and whosoever lights a fire, or rides on any beast, or travels by ship or sea, or whosoever strikes or unalives anything, or slaughters a beast or bird, Or whosoever catches an animal or a bird or a fish, or whosoever fasts makes war on the Sabbaths. The man who does any of these things on the Sabbath shall die, so that the children of Israel shall observe the Sabbaths according to the commandments regarding the Sabbaths of the land, as it is written in the tablets which he gave into my hands, that I should write out all for these laws of the seasons, and all the seasons according to the division of their days. Herewith he completed the account of the division of days.
Okay, question, verse 8. And the man that does any work on this day shall die. Whoever desecrates the day, whoever lies with his wife, or whoever says he will do something on it, that he will set out on a journey thereon in regard to any buying or selling. We'll get to that in Nehemiah. So any man who desecrates the Sabbath or lies with his wife, why?
Because he would be unclean.
Unclean. And the law of uncleanness is from when until when?
Evening until evening.
Can you see that if you don't have this understanding, if you say that the Sabbath day starts in the morning, that you have a problem? Because the law of uncleanness is evening until evening. If you lie with your wife on the Sabbath, you will be unclean.
So that's sin.
No, you don't lie with them. So, according to the law of being unclean, if you lie with your wife, you are unclean, you are undefiled, and you'll be unclean until evening and evening. If your Sabbath day starts in the morning, you have a problem. That means that when you wake up, you'll be clean because it's a new day. That's contradicting God's law. I hope you guys can see it.
Yeah, that was a little bit of an eye-opener for me, some of those things.
There's a lot here in Jubilee. I know we can reference the book of Nehemiah over and over in this. But I wanted to read this to conclude to you, because we're going to go, eventually we're going to go to the creation days of Genesis and also compare it to this. Because this is the account of an angel speaking in the first person. And people who do not know who that angel is, that is your Messiah. Okay, but any case. So if I go now, because yeah, it's speaking in general, the Sabbath days, and it says days, plural, feast days, Sabbath days, everything. If let's say it's a Sabbath day, which is a normal 7-day Sabbath rest, not a feast. If I sleep with my wife, if your Sabbath day, for example, starts in the morning, and I tonight sleep with my wife, am I clean tomorrow morning according to the law of uncleanliness?
No.
No, I'm unclean until the evening, because a day is from evening until evening. You cannot contradict the word of the Most High. Be very careful when you do it. And if you want to argue these points, I would highly suggest stick around. This is the first part of the Sabbath day's teaching when it starts. Way more obvious as we carry on, especially if we go to the Quails, the manna, if we go to the parables, all of these things, the book of Nehemiah and the crucifixion laws. Then after the crucifixion laws, yes, there are crucifixion laws in scripture. Then we'll go to the crucifixion of the Messiah, because it has to obtain to the laws that were written down. There are laws regarding crucifixion, and you'll see how obvious it becomes and the mistake that people make. So I hope this helps the people a bit. I think we must end it off here, Adrian, so that we can carry on with the next one. Will be the Quails, and we'll carry on from there, because this is going to become very long. How long has it been now?
I have no idea. I don't even remember what time we started, unless I don't know if I have a clock on here. Never seen one. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think we covered enough for people to go back and reread and study. I just found something here in Jubilees, chapter 50 that opened my eyes that I didn't know. So, yeah, it's a good place to stop. And then the next available day that we have, we'll pick back up and cover as much as we can.
Or tonight. Fuck, it's only 9 p.m. for us. It's not like we're gonna do anything.
You got a lot of energy.
You don't?
No, when I read scriptures like this, it drains me slightly. But
okay.
I hope people will go and research what we've just covered. And these are just the basic principles and the oracles of the Most High. These are basic or foundational things that we should understand. And as we read scripture and as we get taught in his knowledge and truth, we'll start understanding better and better and better. Scripture will never contradict itself, ever, ever, ever. It can't happen. And I want to start addressing the arguments that these people have, like, for example, the quails and the manna and all of these things, and show them their mistakes. And they must have this background we covered now to understand that. How long are you unclean for? For evening till evening. When does a feast start? From evening until evening. The feast days are established days. They are from evening until evening because that's an established day, not a separate timing day from exactly the same time to the next time. For example, it's established in the same way with that Yahweh says, in this same day I will lead you out of Egypt. He led them out at night because that day, that feast was established. That's why a feast is from evening until evening, because creation was morning and evening and it was the first day. So I hope you guys are grasping what we're trying to show you and that it edifies you slightly. I don't want to make this too long because I know if it's very long, you battle to download it, Adrian.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but also I've noticed that if we cover too much at one time, then I'll have a bunch of questions, and so will you, about stuff that we just covered. So I'm going to try to download this and get it uploaded as quickly as possible so people can go back and rewatch it. But also, I just want to make this very clear, something that should stand out to everybody, what we just read in the last two chapters of Jubilee. It's very clear. If you're not keeping this day properly, this is a salvational issue, people. That's why it's so important to cover. So I hope people understand that. This is not something to be taken lightly. It's something that is very serious, and it could cost you your salvation. So again, when Yahweh shows us these things and points these things out to us, as we study and as we sharpen each other, we're going through these scriptures. Once you're made known, then once you come to that understanding, you're now responsible. The blood is not on our hands. You're now responsible to keep the things that you just heard, right? And it doesn't matter if you agree with us. You're going to have to go back through and study this out if you're in disagreement. And I would recommend that you come back when we finish up the rest of it as well, because again, there's still a lot to cover that we haven't touched.
And also just note that, remember in the beginning how we said, the Father will lead us in all truth. We are baptized and the Spirit leads us in all truth. All of us, every single person here has made all of these mistakes. They didn't keep the Sabbath correctly. They didn't keep the law. It doesn't mean now because we've read this, I'm taking the Bible and I'm hitting you with it and saying this is the beating ram I'm beating you with. I'm asking you to go research these things and come up with clear answers. Tell me, listen, Jason, I believe it's from morning until morning because of this. And I'll ask you, okay, the uncleanliness law, how does that contradict your argument? And you'll have to give me a clear answer with no contradiction. Your bucket must not be leaking. This is something you have to study out. So we're not doing this teaching to tell brothers and sisters they're idiots and fools. It's to sanctify the body so that the body can become one. At the moment, the body is there, but it's a bit separated. You know, the arms and the legs aren't working together. The legs are walking to one side while the arms wants to do something else. We must walk together in all knowledge and all truth. And the Spirit will lead us in all knowledge and truth. And this is how we should understand it. Yes, we get people that are totally arrogant regarding this topic and start beating people up and calling people names. This is not our purpose. Our purpose is, if you believe what those people say, you have to answer these questions we are asking now. And as we carry on, you will see how more obvious it becomes. If it's not obvious enough now, you can hang around. There will be 2 or 3 parts to this, and you'll see how obvious it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hallelujah to that. And again, I just saw a question. People don't stress out over this stuff, right? Everything that we just went over, if there's certain things that didn't make sense, again, I'm going to post this video on my YouTube page, and you can go back and rewatch it. That's why we did this today, so that we could record it and upload it to YouTube so you can watch it at your own pace. Don't stress out if you've not been doing these things. If you're just learning them, don't stress yourself out over it. Jason, that's exactly what Jason was just saying. We all have broken these things. But that's why I said, once you come to the knowledge of understanding exactly what it is we're talking about, then you're going to be held responsible for it if you deny it. That's it. So don't try to stress yourself out and think, well, I'll never get to what Jason knows. That's not what it's about. It's about guarding the commandments and loving the Father and loving your neighbor as yourself, which are the commandments. But the whole duty of a man is to guard the commandments. That's what the wisest man, aside from our Messiah, said, King Solomon. Guard the commandments. Start with something small and work your way into this sanctification process. But be careful while you're in the sanctification, especially in the beginning of it, because Satan will attack and you will be tested. And every wind of doctrine that comes along, if you're not studying for yourself, don't take Jason's opinion, Emmanuel's opinion, my opinion. Go study it out for yourself. I will post a video. You'll have all the scriptures we went through. Study it out and see what Yahweh reveals to you. That's the best thing you can do for yourself. Don't listen to any man. All right, so with that, any closing statements? Any other closing statements?
I would just highly recommend people go study these things out. Don't just some people are very, very sweet with their tongue and they make things sound very truthful, but they're contradicting so much scripture. Don't listen to any one of us on here. Don't think we know scripture. Go test us. Go test the scripture, because we have to test everything and hold fast what is good. We have to test these things, because certain men have crept in and defiled the body, and it's busy happening. You'll see this with many guys. I don't like to call names on here, but this happens so much. And as soon as you correct them, they want to call you names and mock and scoff and argue. It's also part of the reason, like I said, we did not do it while the dust was still in the air and everyone is fighting. We wait for the dust to settle so that the emotions can calm down. Our egos can breathe a bit so that we can teach this in love and kindness and peace. We're not here to argue with people and call them idiots and fools. You are our brothers and sisters, and I hope you go study this and it edifies you. There's a lot more to come. We've just scratched the surface on this. It becomes way more clearer as we go into it.
Okay. All right, so we'll end it here. I don't know when it'll be uploaded. I'll try to get it done as soon as it can download and upload. It's all going to depend on TikTok and then how long it takes YouTube to allow it to upload, but I'll get it up as quickly as possible. I'm glad everybody was able to be here for it, and for those that weren't, if someone asks about it, you can just tell them that it'll be posted on my YouTube page. So with that, I'm going to end this. Thank you, Jason, for everything. You're always a blessing. Thank you, Emmanuel, for reading. And thank all of you guys for being here and hanging out with us. It's been a great day. Excellent Shabbat.
If there's anyone, thank you, and thanks for sharing your page with us. If there's anyone that has questions regarding small things on this, in the teachings that's coming, we'll probably cover this, but if there's questions regarding the law and those things, if you want to, after this, we can come live and answer your questions. If there's something that you don't understand fully, but more than welcome. We'll come live and we'll answer your questions.
Yeah, there was a bunch of people.
Okay.
We could also do an entire Q&A after. I mean, if you guys want to do it after this teaching, we can, but we could do an entire Q&A based on everything we cover at the very end. Set aside a few hours for that. So either way, it doesn't matter. Either way, just I'll get in touch with you guys after.
If they have questions regarding the topics we covered now, we can answer that. I don't want to ask questions on a teaching that's still coming. There's a lot of things that we're still going to cover that might answer their questions. But if it's regarding God's law and how to keep it, or Trinity, whatever, we'll be more than welcome to come on and discuss it. But there's more coming in the teaching, so just be patient. There's a lot still coming.
Yeah. All right, so let me end this and then we can come back on. But I want to end it so I can get it downloading, so it's not too long.
Thanks, Adrian. Love you, bud. Keep well.
Love you, buddy. Talk to you later, man. Shalom, guys. We'll be back on just a little bit.